Shout out to Roger Ebert, who gave the original Gladiator 2 stars.
No way.
What?
No
he gave
way.
500 Days of Summer 4 stars. 500 Days of Summer.
You know what?
Today on Foreplay, we are concluding our Sword and Sandals arc. Of course, these are epic films made over a 50, 60 year, 70 year period, I guess now, with Gladiator 2 that we're doing today in conjunction with Gladiator 1. Obviously, Gladiator 2, Ridley Scott's latest film that came out the end of last year, 2024. These are set in either Rome or biblical times or ancient Greece, so parts of the ancient world. We started this arc with Ben-Hur, moved on to Spartacus. Then, if you guys haven't seen it yet, we did Troy, which was more recent.
Yeah.
And now we are here for a combo episode on Gladiator 1 and Gladiator 2. We did say for our next arc, just as an announcement, we did say that we were going to do Robert Eggers. And we're not going to do Robert Eggers. We have changed our minds due to the...
We'll do it in the future.
We'll do it in the future.
Yeah.
Because hopefully Robert Eggers is not going anywhere. We wish him a long life and many future movies. We love Robert Eggers. But in the light of David Lynch's unfortunate death, we are going to do a David Lynch arc. Because I think some of you probably heard about his death, but maybe you haven't seen a lot of his movies, or maybe you haven't seen any of his movies, and you might not understand why this was such a big deal in the entertainment media. So we are going to survey his movies. We're going to do them in chronological order. And the movies we are selecting are first, Blue Velvet, second, Wild at Heart, third, Lost Highway, and fourth and finally, Mulholland Drive. These are the films we're going to be watching. Many of them, if you guys are wondering how to watch along, are on the Criterion Collection. I know I haven't checked to see if... I think probably all of them are, but I haven't checked to see where those are streaming yet. But I know at least most of them are on the Criterion Channel. The Criterion Channel, which is the Criterion Collection streaming service, which I recommend that you get. It's a great use of your money. But in any case, that's what we're going to be doing next. David Lynch. So another director arc for you. Now, in our Sword and Sandals arc now, we have gone back in time from Troy to Gladiator, which was released in 2000. Was it 99 or 2000?
Yep.
2000,
I think, yeah.
And then Gladiator 2, its very, very recent sequel that came out, I believe, yesterday for free for streaming on Paramount+. It's probably not worth even watching for free, if I'm going to be honest.
That's the sad thing about this episode, though, is when, like, by the way, Gladiator is in my top 10 films. I've said this for many, many, many years. So we're actually taking one of my favorite films. It's not even getting a full episode, and half the episode is going to be shitting on a sequel that doesn't have to have anything to do with it. But whatever, it's all good.
No, we can actually probably just not talk that much about Gladiator 2 because
I think at the end,
I think it's not very interesting, and we'll say what needs to be said quickly about it.
Right.
And we'll probably spend most of the time talking about Gladiator, which is a Best Picture winner, obviously, Best Actor for Russell Crowe, one of the most lauded movies of all time, a classic that even if you do not like this genre, you kind of must see for cultural relevance to understand the lines from this movie that are super famous, the scenes that are super famous, and really... You
did also name your child after the fucking film, Monty. True? If he didn't do that scene where he goes, Maximus Meridius, Max would have a different name right now, mate.
Here's what I would say. My
that
son
scene
Maximus,
just hit too hard, didn't it? Listen, I've never recovered from that scene either, Monty. Don't worry.
My son's name of Maximus was not hurt by the existence of this movie. Let's put it that way. If this had been a crap movie with a crap main character, I probably wouldn't have named my son that. But I did study Latin. And for the record, by the way, I want to get this out right away, is that Maximus is not a real Roman name. Nobody had the name Maximus. That was a title that was given, which means the word in Latin means the greatest. So it is kind of hilarious that he is in Rome as a man named Maximus, which is like something that you would have to earn by being a great general typically. And it was not your first name. It was not your first name.
It's basically like walking around with the name of the legend.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
For example, it was given to the Roman general who defeated Hannibal, right? So you really had to be hot shit. And not to say that Maximus isn't hot shit in Gladiator, because he obviously is. He's the general of his time, but it wouldn't have been his first name like that. But we're not going to talk about all the historical inaccuracies of this movie, or especially Gladiator 2, because it's a waste of time. You guys can look them up. There are some kind of funny exceptions that I'll mention, but that's not really what these movies are about. Just know that they're not historically accurate. If you guys want to hear more about gladiators, we talk a lot about historical gladiators in our Spartacus episodes. You guys can go back. We're not going to rehash that conversation here. But let's start with you, Thorin. Why is this film in your top 10 films? Because you rate it very highly.
I mean, first of all, I do think it's actually an incredibly well shot and put together film. Like, I actually think the pacing on this one's awesome. One thing I always tell people is, if you've ever seen just the theatrical version, I do think there's another film that benefits from a director's cut. A few of the scenes they add, like, flesh things out a bit more. I actually think it's one of the best paced films I've ever seen. It's one of the only ones where I never had, like, a lull in the film for me. Like, actually, if we're going to contrast later with Gladiator 2, Gladiator 2 has a lot of issues, even though it tries to be similar paced movie, because it doesn't pull it off. So I think the thing about the first one is, I can vibe with it the whole way through, even though it definitely is not the same thing the whole way. It has very transformative movements between scenes and action, etc. I also think, in line of the fact that people have watched the Troy episode or other, this is another film that is phenomenal in the action sequences. Like, the sequences in the actual arena, I can remember them all vivid. I can remember the fight we had, the old Gladiator, when he fights first of all against the lions, and you can even remember the scenes, the way it's shot, some of the movements of the camera and stuff. I also think the central performances, they're all fucking really good. All of them. Like, even the guy, I don't even know his name, the guy who plays like the African character, he does a pretty good job in it. Obviously, all the central cast, from other films are fucking phenomenal. I do think as well it is one of the best, like, leading man performances ever. Like, I think Russell Crowe just kills it. There's actually a little story he once told Monty, which it gives me the sense that this movie was another one where it wasn't like everyone knew this would be the shit. It just kind of like came out of nowhere. There's a story where Russell Crowe says the first day he worked on this film with Ridley Scott Told him, you'll all remember this at the beginning of the film, that scene at the beginning where it's like the silence before the war against the Germans, and Russell Crowe's walking around sort of reflectively and contemplatively looking at the forest and, the quiet chill killer. And there's that scene where a little bird comes along and he sort of looks at it or whatever. And Russell Crowe said, Ridley Scott just said something to him like, oh, just do something with that bird, like look at it or whatever. And then Russell Crowe just sort of went, what, like this? And then did exactly what he did in the film, like looked at it like in that way where you would think that was in the script and it was all written and it wasn't. And that was just like a little throwaway moment. And the idea is he actually said after that, like Ridley Scott was sort of like, yeah, that'll do. And he just realized like, oh, we're going to get on like House on Fire. Like we just vibe. We just get each other. And that's the thing. The synergy between Russell Crowe and the direction is so tight in this film. It's just mega film for me.
Now, Russell Crowe is very handsome in Gladiator, but after all of that combat in the arena, I bet he smelled disgusting and he could have used a Mando deodorant wipe to freshen up after his latest round of conquest and slaughter. Now, you guys can get Mando without having to go into the gladiatorial arena, and you can smell fresh at all times. Mando offers a variety of men's grooming products just for you. And you can get them either in solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, which is a kind of lotion that you can rub in anywhere. They have bar soap. They have body wash. They have everything you could possibly need. Many in manly fragrances like bourbon leather or clover woods. That's my personal favorite. And you can give this all a try if you are looking to mix up your grooming routine in the new year. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like a mini body wash and deodorant wipes, and free shipping. As a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack. Use code 4PLAY at shopmando.com, shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. It is so important to keep 4Play going, guys, that you support our sponsors. And thank you very much to Mando.
Yeah, I mean, Gladiator, the first one, is essentially, it's got all of the hallmarks of everything that made great epics great. and that is you have an incredible cast. And I mean, this cast is off the fucking chain. You've got Russell Crowe. By the way, this is probably a career standout for him, if we're being honest.
Why not?
I mean, I will say, like, obviously, it was very hard for him to replicate that kind of like smoldering youthful fucking anger that he had in a film like Romper Stomper back in the 90s. But he obviously he did LA Confidential before this, which we've already covered. He's on the come up very much as a mainstream American star, and even though, by the way, he would go on to pick some very kind of not typical projects of a leading man. And then one of the things I kind of like about Russell Crowe is once he'd gone from being absolutely fucking shredded, perfect specimen, he just went in a fucking decline. And basically him and Ridley Scott would just spend, shit movies in vineyards, drinking, getting fat, having a good time. I like that Russell Crowe has just embraced that, like, look, it's not realistic to stay in pristine shape for the entirety of your life. And now I'm a big fat drunk and I fucking love it. So anyway, not saying there's anything there that I can relate to. But anyway, you got Russell Crowe. You got Joaquin
were in pristine
Phoenix.
shape?
By the way, I also think
when I used to
I
play
think he's even
nice.
even commented in interviews as well, Richard, that like the other reason why he couldn't do it is I think to have like the shape he was in, it's one of those ones where you eat like an apple a day and drink like 17 cups of coffee or whatever, it's one of those things.
Yeah, it's like the juice is never worth the squeeze, especially whenever you have to do a shirt off scene, you have to dehydrate yourself for 24 hours.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would say, like, even this is a complete aside, but even this, where he's obviously super ripped, seems realistic in terms of male body.
It's not like
in comparison to
Hollywood now. Yeah, exactly.
In comparison to like 60-year-old
Chris Hemsworth or something.
Chris Hemsworth basically shaved 10 years off his life to play Thor.
No, absolutely,
yeah. It's
the real irony is he actually did sort of a Christian Bale, but just gets none of the plaudits for it, and that didn't do it for art reasons. Really,
and then it's like,
he did it to be in a cape shit movie.
Yeah, what we're gonna do now is you're just the comic relief for the rest
of
the
I know. Exactly.
I killed myself for this. Art. I really like Chris Hemsworth too. He's like low-key, he's a cool guy. But anyway, so you got Russell Crowe, as I said, this is like one of his career standouts. Certainly, we like Bud White as well, and Hando in Romper Stomper. He's had some great characters down the years. 310 to Yuma. Master and Commander. I love
the remake of 310 to Yuma. I fucking love that movie.
I know. We nearly did that.
Insider, obviously.
Insider. I mean, like, this is a guy, by the way, who, like, low-key,
he's actually like an underrated, one of the best actors ever. For real.
He has real range. Then Joaquin Phoenix, who, by the way, is just perfect.
Isn't this his real breakout for me? Because, mate, I used to think on some of the other films he was a bit whatever. He has mega in this role because he does that Joffrey Baratheon thing of he makes you really hate this character. It's so tangible the hate you have for him. But that's actually hard to do. It's very easy to be a comical caricaturist villain where it's like he's evil. Like this character, by the way, it's also, I think that's actually underrated. I think that character, the way he's so like capricious, Monty, that is what a nightmare emperor would be like. He actually captures that thing of sort of like the like implied terror that would be around you if you were just walking into rooms and stuff. I thought that's palpable on screen when he's there. Yeah.
You're very good. Tomorrow night I'll tell you the story of Emperor Claudius. He was betrayed by those closest to him, by his own blood.
But what's absolutely crucial for the success of this movie as an epic, and therefore by extension as a movie, is ultimately the supporting cast of actors that they work in. You've already mentioned Duncan. Well, right, put it this way. Oliver Reed obviously died quite famously. We don't need to rehash the stories about that. He died arm wrestling a Latvian sailor. And then because it was Oliver Reed, everyone just thought he was asleep at the bar. And he was dead. Then he was just there like, fucking hell, Ollie, he'll do anything to get out of buying around. But anyway, so Oliver Reed was like an actor that he kind of redeemed his legacy a little bit with his
He's mega in this film, isn't he? Like, again, another completely iconic, so many lines from this film, by the way, you can remember. It's crazy.
Like Oliver Reed was basically.
I didn't say I met him. I said he gave me like fucking it's just
yes, exactly.
A symbol of your freedom. He touched me on the shoulder, and I was free. You knew Marcus Aurelius? I did not say I knew him. I said he touched me on the shoulder once.
Exactly.
Chef's kiss.
Oliver Reed by this point had essentially been like consigned to like, he's a bit of an embarrassment essentially, because he was always drunk. He used to make a cunt of himself on like late night talk shows. It was really sad. You were watching someone who basically...
It was like George Best of acting, wasn't he? People thought he was like a one-note joke from the 70s or something. Yeah, it's sad.
And it's what I mean. If you actually grew up and you like, particularly if you watched some of Oliver Reed's early performances, it
was a stud, wasn't it? Yeah. By the way, the joke is he was Russell Crowe in his day. He kind of was that kind of a guy.
Absolutely.
Out of all of the Three Musketeers adaptations that they've done, the Michael York one that Oliver Reed is Athos in from 1973 is my favorite version of the Three Musketeers.
Yes.
Yeah, and like Curse of the Werewolf was his first leading role, which is obviously the Hammer horror Terence Fisher movie, which is great. Recasts it's something that's really ahead of its time because it recasts lycanthropy as burgeoning male sexuality, which by then that was perfect for Oliver Reed. This guy was an absolute fucking stud. He laid pipe, believe it. So you got Oliver Reed in there, like, so redeeming his legacy, swinging for the fences, like obviously working with a British director who's also working class that kind of understands him. There was nothing. He wasn't played for jokes. Oliver Reed is a key central character to this movie. Gets all of his great lines, gets to act.
Marcus Aurelius is dead, Maximus. We mortals are but shadows and dust. Shadows and dust, Maximus!
You've already mentioned Jimon.
By the way, think how crazy it also is that he did die and they actually had like slight technical difficulty. You'll never know that if you watch the film. It's only if someone tells you that later that they had to like do clever shots with certain things. You wouldn't know that. You would think he just lived through the whole filming process. Like, unless I would consciously think and look up online what they changed, I would never see it. Like, I think they did an awesome job covering that up.
They had to kill Proximo.
This is before CGI all up over the place. Whatever they did was clever.
Proximo wasn't supposed to die, but they had to kill him, which actually ends up being a really good scene in the movie.
Yeah, it's better, isn't it?
Shadows and dust.
And then Jimon Honsu, who will always be Horus from the Stargate movie for me.
Yeah.
But he's fantastic. He basically spanned this. I think he used to be in French-speaking movies, and he basically spanned this and Amistad were the two big breakouts for him in Hollywood. And he spanned this into and he's been a baddie in Guardians of the Galaxy now and everything. So that's great for him. And then obviously the classic Brits. Derek Jacobi, Richard Harris.
By the way, Derek Jacobi has played this type of a role in a million things that people don't know. He was obviously in all like I Claudius. He's exactly that sort of person. Exactly. He's always doing these roles, all Shakespearean roles. That's similar,
right. I actually saw him as King Lear in a production of King Lear in New York.
Yeah, he's just an awesome classical actor. He's been the character actor go-to for any of this type of role. Tailor-made for this movie. And then obviously Richard Harris in one of his later roles, this is before he went, obviously all the Zoomers will know him from Harry Potter. Richard Harris, one of the great British actors of all time. And this is in his down period. He's great in this movie. He adds much needed texture. And this is the fundamental difference is what I'm getting at. If you look at the casting for Gladiator, which is absolutely not perfect.
Bonnie Nielsen is the sister of the whatever, I can't remember what her name was in the film. Yeah, she's fucking fire too. Very limited role, but does a lot with it.
Yeah, like you couldn't recast someone.
No.
You simply couldn't imagine somebody else in any of these roles. You go to Gladiator 2, and the casting is trash. The casting is utter garbage. The only redemptive element about the casting is Denzel Washington. Like the main actor, for him to even be compared to Russell Crowe,
it's crazy, isn't it?
Is fucking horrifying to me. Yeah. The actor there, Paul Mescal, which by the way, appropriate. I needed to be fucking tripping balls or drunk on tequila. Pick your poison on that one to watch this fucking film. He can't even maintain an accent, and he has absolutely zero gravitas and zero charisma. He's got some insane delivery when he's doing all these speeches and monologues.
He's trying to joke is, that's in one of the things, Richard, that is so poor, because you've called it Gladiator 2 and you've directly connected it. He's doing like a Maximus type speech. And you know what? This is why I said that thing to Monty. On paper, I can see how they thought this would work, but they didn't execute at all. Like, it's so, whereas they would have the gravitas when Russell Crowe delivers it. He's saying like the same sort of shit, and you're just going like, nothing's hitting.
There once was a time when honor meant something in Rome. In this Rome, I no longer believe that exists. We must find it.
Like, this is just
Bro,
fucking.
He doesn't even understand the delivery. I'll give you an example, because I know we're not going to talk about Gladiator 2 as much now, which I'm really sad about, because I did a whole script.
Well, we can contrast this if you want.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's a line in Gladiator 2 where, after he breaks out of prison at the end, before the battle where the emperors get murked, he fucking kills a guy with his trainer with the wooden sword. And the line is, wood or steel, it still has a point. And he shouts it. He goes, wood or steel, it still has a point. By the way, I've just delivered it better than he does in the movie. Right?
Wood or steel, a point is still a point.
But anyway, clearly what the scene called for was for him to push it through and to whisper it, to deliver it, like, downplay. Like, imagine Russell Crowe sarcastically delivering it to him, going, wood or steel, still has a point. And then he walks on. That would have been infinitely better. And it's like, what makes me sad about that is, I don't know if Ridley Scott just gave up on asking him for, like, another take. We'll do that one again, yeah? Like, I don't know if he just got bored of doing it, because that's a scene that absolutely needs another take. Not to mention, like, I don't know why he does this, but for some reason, when he's doing all the monologues, which, by the way, would have sounded straight fire if it was Russell Crowe doing them.
Agreed.
He has this delivery where he does, like, this mad, like, sticks his jaw out like the Habsburg jaw. He looks ridiculous in every scene. He does these monologues. So you're meant to, and unfortunately, this is because of the nature of the script, he is meant to be, and by the way, this is, maybe we get into this, why would this actually retcons Maximus?
I think it works. This makes the first one worse if you watch it.
Yes, of course it does. Of course it does. So he had a son that he just never. Remember, the whole thing was, I will fucking have my vengeance for my family. That was, but not this kid. Don't give a fuck about this kid, actually. Send him to Namibia and fucking, you just join some African army as a mercenary, and maybe one day you get to come back to Rome on some white savior
That was
bullshit.
the whole premise of Gladiator 1, is that he actually, initially, he has nothing to live for. So then he has two reasons. He has the social reason of fulfilling Max, but then he also has, like, hey, if my kid was killed, well, actually, one of the only people I care for was this woman, Priscilla. I'll at least save her kid, who, by the way, is basically like my kid, isn't it? Like that. But it can't actually be your kid. That is such a stupid reveal. When they did that, by the way, the second they did that, Richard, I already knew he was going to put that armor on at some point.
Yeah, I know. Of course it was. Oh, don't get me started on the member berries. Right. So anyway.
Oh, by the way,
it gets worse. It gets worse.
I was just going to keep doing the casting thing, but
keep going.
It gets worse because I really hated it, because basically by making Lucius Verus Maximus's son, they character assassinate Maximus, because Maximus is the one who is saying, I will do anything to save my family. My family was the most important thing. But watching these movies back to back, you notice things that you might not otherwise, including the conversation he has with Lucilla, who always had the hots for him, right? But it seems like Maximus wasn't, he knew it was dangerous, especially with his relationship with Marcus Aurelius.
Before horse.
Yeah, exactly.
So the Maximus Code.
So the point is that they have a conversation in the first movie that goes something like this. How old is your kid, Lucilla? Oh, he's about 8. My kid's about 8 too. So that means he cheated on his wife that he loved and was super devoted to, and that's the entire essence of his character.
Ever. It's mad, isn't it? I know, it's mental.
Thank you.
And I hear you have a son.
Yes. Lucius. He'll be nearly 8 years old.
My son is also nearly 8.
So he either cheated on his wife or like had a kid with Lucilla and then immediately had a kid with, like, it just brings up too many weird questions about his character.
Just basic science tells you he was piping him at both at the same time.
So I was like, what is this? What is this?
Yeah. So I didn't need that. I don't need to retcon Maximus into being an arsehole. So no,
exactly.
Fuck you, Gladiator 2. But then also, while we're talking about casting, think about Joaquin Phoenix is the fucking, Emperor Commodus.
Don't even come close, mate. They're a one-note joke.
I'm going to tell you something, Duncan, that will horrify you, and you can Google this. Those two dog shit actors, which I do not know where they came from. By the way, is there ever been an effeminate man who just isn't a villain? Like, it's always like they're just hamming it up, mincing around, being pure evil. It's like, yeah, I don't know about this one. Anyway, right? So, do you know who they based their characters on? You know where they drew inspiration from? Beavis and Butthead.
Oh my God.
That is an actual thing they said. They thought that would be good to tell the world on a press junket. So fuck those two. They are terrible.
This is just the cursed monkey paw, isn't it? Tell you what, Gladiator was so good. I'd love a sequel. No, wait.
Not like that.
Exactly, too late.
Like right. And then I'll just add one more thing.
My cues from Beavis and Butthead for this, like.
Yeah. What are you doing? I'll just add one more thing, and then we can stop comparing the cast, and then we'll get back to Gladiator. But Pedro Pascal in this movie is terrible, and unfortunately,
misused as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, he is written terribly. And so, what in Gladiator 2, what ends up happening is Pedro Pascal, because he tries to usurp the emperors because they're riddled with fucking syphilis or something, and just doing berserk things and constantly wanting to go to war. He even says, "I won't waste another generation of young Roman men fighting these wars for their vanity." And what you realize is, after he's been built up as the big bad general in the opening scene, he's actually a guy who he doesn't believe in the glory of Rome. He doesn't want to waste people's lives fighting endless wars. And then anyway, he gets found out because Denzel Washington plays them by using the information, and then ultimately he gets disgraced, and he gets delivered to the main character, Maximus's kid, who's called, what's he called in this? Fucking Hanno, right? He's called Hanno in this, and so he gets delivered to him, which is the whole point. He wants to kill the general because
for the third kid there, Monty Hanno. Just put that on the shot.
Funny that you mentioned that. Anyway,
he wants to kill the general because the general killed his missus. That's the whole premise for the movie. Then they get into the arena, and Pedro Pascal manhandles him and keeps telling him, like, look, I didn't want to do it, and I didn't know who you were,
and I love your mom.
I love your mom, and I would have died for your father, right? Or your grandfather, who was Marcus Aurelius. But here's the problem with all of this. That still doesn't mean you didn't murk my fucking wife, right? And so here's what they had to do, because the scene where he kills Hanno's wife is ridiculous. It's in the opening scene, right? So she is there. Basically, the scene starts. I am going to war with you, my love. Yes, I will always be your husband. Nom, 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 French kiss. We love each other. There's no more character development of their relationship than that, by the way. Couldn't be asked. Didn't shed a tear. When Maximus comes and finds his wife fucking hung.
That's one of the most heart-wrenching scenes now if you watch it more.
And he just sinks to his knees.
Mate, when you see the scene where his kid's running up thinking Maximus is coming back, that'll tear your heart apart today. If you watch it, still works.
Exactly. So that just the same director, incredibly. So anyway, they're moving through. They're sacking Numidia, the Romans. Pedro Pascal is there, kitted out with all of his boys, and the woman fires an arrow, swings past him, kills the dude in the background, and he turns around, and then he's got a bunch of archers coincidentally around him, and on the ground in the middle of a sacking. Perfect. And then he turns around and he goes, "Kill her! Kill her! So he's immediately identified that she's a woman and that she must be killed for firing an arrow in a war, and specifically kill her. Don't kill anyone else.
Let's divert all troop attention to that.
All archers focus on the woman. Right. So they kill her. By the way, she then does a fucking
of course
Ripley in Alien 3. Fucking. Oh, by the way, they do that as well. Yeah. Right. We're in the desert. Get the screaming women.
Boss.
Right, we're gonna do that, right? So then right, he gets distracted, I know, and he gets knocked out. Now, that when later I am meant to sympathize with Pedro Pascal's character, I don't. He still just killed that bird. He killed her for now, right? So here's the problem. Here's how you could have done this and made him a sympathetic character. It takes no effort whatsoever to fix this in the script, right? Instead of him going, kill her, you may as well be saying, I hate women with bows, kill him, right? It's just so over the top. Instead of doing that, he himself could do it, or one of his archers could kill her.
You're sort of right. It's sort of like I'm in the middle of a battle. How dare a woman fire at me? Divert!
I know it's mad. It's so mental. But anyway, he could have done it, or one of his men could have done it. Then he could have walked over to the body, took off her helmet, realised he's killed a woman. And
chocolate style, yeah. You don't know who it was. Exactly. Yeah.
And he could have been absolutely crestfallen because we know he has no taste
it's a good
for
angle.
war.
Yeah.
Right? So he could have done that, and then he could have said later on, like, I didn't know, I wouldn't have done it, blah, blah, blah. But no, that is a 5-minute thing that you knock out in a writer's room. This script is garbage. It's garbage, and it doesn't even work. And then, of course, someone probably went, what if we had Pedro Pascal get killed by multiple arrows? And that's how he dies, is it? An arrow for an arrow, like, fucking beam me up. And then, like I say, Hanno is like holding it. By the way, he still killed your wife.
I know, it doesn't make any sense why you did
still killed your wife. And he was going, he was a good man. He killed your wife, the love of your life. She's waiting for you in the afterlife, you mad Avenger, you bellend. Gladiator sucks so much.
That's why I actually think you couldn't make Gladiator 1 again, because as I suggested with the Russell Crowe thing, I almost feel like some of the things Russell Crowe did, even with the character of Maximus, is what made that movie fucking sick. It obviously wasn't just the script alone, was it? Because they tried to do something similar here and it all falls flat. They're even trying to essentially create almost beat for beat Gladiator with the same type of a guy. By the way, they're trying to do in that scene, Richard, the same thing. They're trying to show he has no hope left because he's done. And then what does he have to live for? He's nobody. This is all the things from Gladiator. The difference is in Gladiator, they all hit. They're all fucking dope. They all weave a story. They build up future beats. In the Gladiator 2, they get to the big beats and you're just thinking, holy shit, I'm 2/3 through the movie. That can't be. I'm still waiting for the big epic thing to happen like that. This is just going to be it, isn't it? And as you say, when they're doing scenes like he's escaping the prison, there's no like, fucking momentum of something sick's going to happen. In fact, you already know what's going to happen at the end of the film without even seeing the spoiler. You will know halfway through what's going to happen the whole film.
Put it this way, it was one of those movies I could have absolutely not watched it, sat here and just guessed everything correct, and you would be none the wiser. Well, it is the most predictable fucking script I've ever seen in my life.
To turn it back to Gladiator 1, I think the reason why Gladiator 2 doesn't work is because you don't need any more Gladiator than you get in Gladiator 1. And to explain that,
it's almost better, Monty, that there isn't even they actually essentially leave it vague at the end. Like, what do they do with this? Like I said, in some ways that's better though. The mystique of it's probably better than anything you could imagine in it. Like, how could you continue that story?
It's like, and then they wanted to return Rome to a republic. Spoiler: Rome never became a republic again. Like, we know the answer to that question historically. It's just so silly. But I think what works so well about Gladiator 1, the best thing about the first Gladiator movie, is that it's basically just the purest form of middle-aged male power fantasy that exists. If you think about it, checks all the boxes. Middle-aged man who's at the apex of his career and power. But he is dutiful to the wise emperor, and he is actually going to do his duty by returning this. He's returning this to the people of Rome. That's his task. He's the only one who can be trusted for that. And he loves his wife and his children. He will do anything to avenge them. He operates with honor. He's jacked out of his mind. He is simultaneously the best general, the best strategic thinker, and somehow also the best one versus one combatant. I mean,
it's the most legendary gladiator ever, by the way. Just no reason why. Just us, because he's the gladiator. By the way, but it's dope in the movie. You never question that. That's how you know he's sick. You don't even mind ropey parts. I don't even mind that.
It is super dope. That's why I'm saying it's like awesome. for middle-aged men like us, this is the peak fantasy. And
this way, if you're one of these young guys who really vibed with the Northmen, this is like that, but for our generation before, 20 years earlier. It has that same vibe. Yeah, it's like, I agree. It's like masculinity partners.
Yes, that's what it is. And so when we have it and we have this epic conclusion and his self-sacrifice and his achieving of his vengeance through honorable means, right? We don't need that story again because this was such a good representation of that story. And Russell Crowe in particular, he plays this role that in such an with like an understated, smoldering, cold anger that is so brilliant because it's not over the top. He has the gravitas. He has the aura of command around him at all times. He is the Rock. He is unflappable. He is indefatigable in terms of how he pursues his objectives, right? And this is, it's an amazing performance. And so it doesn't work without his performance. And to find that right actor now, all you would be doing at best is copying his performance because this is the definitive performance of this archetype of character.
It's what he got his Oscar for, right? He did win an Oscar for this.
Yeah, think about this as well. Like, to me, the other thing is, I agree with you, Monty. He has this thing where he has the masculine presence. But you know, when people go, women want you to be vulnerable, they don't mean act like a woman. Think about when he's doing the scenes where, like, he's with those little icons of his dead family, mate. Those hit so hard. Again, they're mega understated how he does that, Monty. But you can, like, read the suffering in his eyes and fucking the torment. Those are fantastic scenes. Yeah, the depth is mega.
But I think once you get to a certain point in your life, that's how you care about your family as a man. And he's not out there chasing tail or trying to hook up with Lucilla after his wife dies, even though she's like throwing herself at him virtually. He has a sense of duty even to his deceased family.
If this film was made, Monty, by like Guy Ritchie, be like, all right, Lucilla, how you doing, love? All right, got her right. Oh, I'm in the fucking arena. Get out, you slag. Fucking. And if someone thought, I've just realised, Richard, I actually do want a sequel of Gladiator made by Guy Ritchie doing it like that with all those characters in it. But as a parody, obviously. But that would be amazing. But,
Matthew McConaughey is the Emperor.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it'd be really cool if we had a kind of republic or something. I know, you can do so much, mate. You can do so much. We're actually, by the way, also in 5 minutes making a way better Gladiator 2 as well. We just killed it already.
Mate, I literally could improve that movie in a million ways. It would have took no effort whatsoever.
But yeah, I think that what's at its core, like if I think about how kind of ridiculous Gladiator is, if I actually like take a step back and I think to myself, you know, Lucilla gives Commodus drinks and could sleep with him and could easily kill him at any point in this movie and basically solve all of their problems. And yet she doesn't do that and tries to enact this very
the only way you can kill
plot.
people is 1 versus 1 in arenas with swords. It's Gladiator, bro. You can't use famously the woman's weapon, which is poison in history, the most classic one of all time. That doesn't exist, Monty, you silly fool. You have to fight him one-on-one. And even worse, Monty, it'd be wrong to poison him. You have to challenge him and he has to honorably fight. It's so that aspect is, by the way, again, if someone like me, by the way, who actually does like naively live up to principles and virtues, even though everyone around you doesn't play that game. So Prisoner's Dilemma, you just lose over and over again because everyone else doesn't do that. This is also porn for you, this movie, because it makes you believe, that you could do that in real life. By the way, that's why it's a movie, sadly.
but that's what's so great about this film is that it shows something I think that's eternally noble and true about the masculine spirit. And even though there are a million ways you could pick this apart, from historical accuracy to why doesn't anybody just fucking shank Commodus at any point in time during this film, it would be so fucking easy. I mean, Maximus could have literally just shanked him in the tent. He knows he killed Marcus Aurelius. He's like alone with him. Could have done it at the beginning of the movie. Doesn't end up happening that way, right? You don't question things such as how do the Romans get to his house to kill his wife before he does? Because you would literally just have to send a messenger or send soldiers from that legion who wouldn't be getting there faster than him, who was riding like hell to get there and knew exactly where he was going. Don't question these things, because the ride of it and the emotional experience of it is so good in this movie.
This movie's mega for your suspension of disbelief, Monty. Again, like I say, I'll buy into this movie 100% every time I watch it. Yeah.
It's inspiring. And like, what man doesn't have these fantasies of like strength and honor and the brotherhood of the gladiators and dying a noble
You know what?
A noble death in battle.
That's the one no one talks about. That's the one no one talks about.
This film is the counter to the idea of toxic masculinity. This is positive masculinity. This is what you want heroic men to be like, who can guard society and keep the bad people away and all that shit. Yeah, it's fucking amazing.
And also, it is based in history. Like, Maximus is obviously in certain ways supposed to be like Cincinnatus, who is the dictator who famously gave up his power and just like returned to his farm. It's what the city of Cincinnati is named after, is this Roman general. And he has that same kind of arc. So I think they pull interesting things from Roman history and characters in order to put into this. And also, as we mentioned, I think, Richard, as you mentioned on a previous episode in this arc, Commodus also did actually fight staged matches in the Colosseum. Correct. So they took that idea. Obviously,
he was basically the Vince McMahon of ancient Rome. In more ways than one.
Obviously, they ratcheted this up to 11, which is why we enjoy it. I mean, it is crazy melodramatic, not realistic in terms of what people would actually do, I think.
Well, it's cool to see, though. That's why it plays into the history of the epics, though, doesn't it? Because that's what all those films were, Sparks. That it's all super high, like emotion and epic shit and great. By the way, I said it earlier, so I'll actually run through it for you. This is one of the most iconic quotable films ever. Like, when I even mention characters, almost every character has an iconic quote, which on its own would be the one quote from the movie. So Russell Crowe as Maximus has the whole, I am Maximus Meridius Decimus, I am the revenge. That one.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legions, loyal servant to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
Then he has the whole, are you not entertained? By the way, that's been done in Counter-Strike alone about 50 times now in arenas, if you don't know. Essentially what Carrigan does every time he fucking wins a game he shouldn't win.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
If you go to Joaquin Phoenix, that amazing scene of like, and then the little bees came along to the, that will stay with you forever. That's a fucking amazing scene.
Tell me what you've been doing, busy little bee, or I shall strike down those dearest to you. You shall watch as I bathe in their blood.
Connie Nelson doesn't really have that many, but she has some of, like, you know, the things with fucking, like, her son and stuff like that wins you over. Oliver Reed obviously has, like, that thing I said before, like, I didn't say I knew Marcus Aurelius, I just met him. Or, like, the whole win your crowd, win your freedom. That's fucking banger right there.
Learn from me. I wasn't the best because I killed quickly. I was the best because the crowd loved me. Win the crowd, and you'll win your freedom.
The guy, I can't remember his name, of the junior, whatever his name, the African guy has the whole, like, not today, obviously, like, you will see your family, but not today. Even that's fucking fire yet. As well. Yeah, they go, not yet, not yet. That one's fire too. Obviously, the fucking Richard Harris or whatever is Peter O'Toole has, fucking, what's his name? Marcus Aurelius has that whole speech about Rome was an idea and if you could only whisper it. Like, these are fucking iconic, like, monologues, lines, like.
There was once a dream that was Rome. You could only whisper it. Anything more than a whisper, and it would vanish. It was so fragile. And I fear that it will not survive the winter.
And the film is full of them. There's like 20 of these in this film.
Who's that guy in the first one? Oh fuck, I can't remember the name of the dude now. But anyway, some dude has a wicked line saying, like, these people should know when they're conquered.
It's like one of the soldiers, like, let's talk about the Germans, because we know the Germans.
Yeah, when they're having the Germanic wars.
Think how genius this is. It'd be very easy to present it, Monty, as Rome obviously is efficacious because we're watching a Roman story, and all the main central characters, the general, they don't just make it like, look at these retard Germans. It's more like they make them have their own heroes. They're sort of like unwilling to be conquered. They're like the fucking Celtic and Gaul tribes and stuff who like kept fighting back and didn't just surrender. And they're like the whole thing like, when they get that's fucking baller too. Even that gives them like a sort of generous characterization that's kind of cool, because that makes the war epic in a way. Like that makes like both sides have their own angle. I think that's like this again compared to Gladiator 2, the way they ground this film is fucking mega. Like the first sort of act is already like Shakespearean, mate, with how he's betrayed. As you say, Monty, it's so, if you're someone who, by the way, does think that like you shouldn't play dirty, this film, like I say, is just right up your alley, because if you try doing that in real life, they will absolutely fucking destroy you and kill you, and you will never make it to Act 2. But in this film, of course, it's going to somehow come around to the glorious revenge, but for a higher idea. It's so fucking, if you like that sort of righteous indignation, this film is so fucking good with it. That's the fuel of the film.
Yeah. And it just starts off, I mean, you see the same in Gladiator 2, obviously. They try and mimic the epic start of Gladiator 1 by having the kind of marine amphibious assault on Numidia. But honestly, like watching the first scene of Gladiator 1, it is so hard to top that sequence, from Maximus preparing the troops and saying, you know, no, we don't need to move the catapults. They're in range already. He just shows absolute command over his men. And I mean, his costume, if I could wear his costume every day for the rest of my life, I would. That armor with the one wolf pelt on each shoulder is like the coolest fucking thing you could ever wear. So he looks amazing. And then all of the action in that sequence feels real in terms of the violence. It's extremely
exactly what we were talking about with Troy, and how for all of its faults as a movie, the one thing you're absolutely invested in from a perspective of just utter believability is the battle scenes. There's no CGI, it's all extras, it's all sets, it's all happening. Gladiator 2 compared to Gladiator 1, again, it's the overuse of CGI, and the CGI is a bit fucking wonky. I mean, maybe the opening naval battle scene isn't that bad, but it does have that uncanny valley kind of thing going on with the
crocodiles or whatever, or the sharks rather, whatever. It's like you're like fuck off, you know what I mean? Yeah,
I mean, put it this way, I nearly turned it off. I was like, I can't do this again, but I did do it again for the show. But I mean, for me, even the baboon fight at the start, and it's like I don't know, like when you're writing a script, there has to be a component of it where you go, are we going to be able to do this without it looking shit? And if the answer to that is no, do something else. It's simple as that.
That's why I've said it in the past. The actual joke, if you ever hear Hollywood stories, is because they just offload everything. Like, oh, we'll do that in post. Well, in some ways, you're not doing it anymore. Like, that's not Ridley Scott's eye. By the way, if I watch a Ridley Scott film, if people don't know Ridley Scott's background, he came from being someone who was amazing at making commercials. He had an incredible eye for like image, color, setup, shot. Well, that is essentially one of the best skills of Ridley Scott. He's an amazing technical director. Like, he has fantastically shot films. Like I said, the action sequence, every action sequence in this film, by the way, is iconic. Like, there's the one against the fucking lions. Think about the one where he's on the horse and then they pass him that sword. Everyone remembers all these. The second I mentioned the fight against the Emperor is fucking god tier, especially when they add in that part where they secretly shank him at the back, etc. And he's cheating and using sand and that. Oh, it's all fucking, it's so well shot. By the way, Richard's even pointed this out in the past. I don't know if it was on this show. There's even a weird thing where Russell Crowe at the end when he's dying did have them, if you ever look, just make like a little pillow. It's like, Richard, even if I know that, I don't see it when I watch the scene because I'm just in the movie. You know what I mean? Yeah, you wouldn't notice it. It's just the thing when you notice it is mad.
This way, I don't care that Russell Crowe was running bullshit back then. Like if it gives you this movie, do absolutely. You just do what's necessary. You do what if you're a diva, whatever, fine.
No, I've always thought that's one of those moments where I always thought people don't seem to understand film the way I perceive it. You know that famous Christian Bale tantrum where he's going, "You fuck up my lights up." I've always thought, is no one actually aware of what's going on there? You have one of the best actors in the whole world who, by the way, like we said, it does commit to like things like fucking body transformations that probably cost you like part of your life. He's trying to do a performance essentially because he's being paid millions. Only you can do. You're the one guy that can do that. And some dickhead in the background's like, fucking around or on a phone or knocks a light over somewhere. That's totally justified. Look, part that I'm doing this is because this is what I was like in fucking Couchsurfing. People don't know. People fucked up my performance. I am hired to be me on camera, mate. So if you're going to get in the way of me being me, I'm going to fucking tear you up and tell you what the fuck you doing. Like, where's my food? I've had this thing. So I actually think, here's the problem, though, Rich. I'm with you. If you do that, though, this is the advice I gave Simple many years ago. You can do that, but you better knock it out the park. If you knock it out the park, I can justify it, mate. The problem is if at the end you fuck it up, now you were an arsehole. But if you're the demon, but you kill it like if you kill it like this, you can turn to the person and go, "I'm the only one who knows how I did this, so just let me do it my way." So no, I fuck with that, mate. Even though it sounds like some tyrannical shit because you're thinking of being the guy getting told off, like I can see why they blow up like that. I've always said the same thing about divas. If you're one of the most famous singers in the world, your whole skill is you have an amazing voice, like operatic level that not many people can do. And by the way, you already have $200 million, could sit in a mansion the rest of your life, right? If I choose to come out of my mansion and go to fucking Manchester in England, you better have the flavour of crisps I like. You're not going to go, I'm just ready salty ones. No, I could be in my mansion eating any crisps. My joke there is crisps is the greatest thing I can imagine as a luxury item, but I'm from the northeast, mate. You know, unlimited crisps is the dream.
Rich enough to own a mansion, not rich enough to have one of the best chefs in the world prepping your food. Give me my Monster Munch.
I do think there's sort of like a parallel of like you can be a diva if you deliver on it in that sense. And Russell Crowe, if he did, this was deserved. This movie's one of the best ever made.
I mean, put it this way as well. It's obviously implied by the fact he made many movies with Ridley Scott, and they had a really good relationship, and had a good relationship on set in this movie. It's probably implied he was indulged a little bit by the director because, like, if you're giving me gold on screen, but you have to lie down for fucking 12 hours while we get our shots here, we'll just build you a pillow.
By the way, I could imagine Ridley Scott vibed with it, Richard, because if anything, I imagine he's like that as a director. Isn't surely he in the auteur school of you do it my way and it's this, that, the other. By the way, that's probably to his fault in later films that are bad, but I'm sure that's what makes his best films mega, because I tell you what, he has that vision. He has a really good fucking eye.
I mean, and on that note as well, I mean, because, you know, we should probably talk about, like, the direction in Gladiator. You have to understand, Ridley Scott, right? This is kind of the turning point of, you know, so first of all, Ridley Scott had made some bad movies before this. He'd obviously done Alien, he'd done Blade Runner. They're fantastic. They're modern classics. No one's gonna dispute that. I'll even give him Thelma and Louise. Not my movie, right? But if people love that movie for its sentiment and the fact it was something a bit different, because it wasn't like a Bonnie and Clyde criminals on the run kind of movie. It was a Bonnie and Bonnie movie, and that was unique for the time in the early 90s. So that's fair enough. Obviously, Ridley Scott is a guy who does have a feminist aspect to his filmmaking. Remember, he did Thelma and Louise, he did G.I. Jane, right? Like, which is another movie that's like
inadvertently set up Will Smith to get go and slap fucking Chris Rock, but side detail there. It's completely wrong piece of trivia.
But the problem, unfortunately, is that kind of like after Gladiator and maybe Black Hawk Down, and it's kind of after that it is just he's a coin toss director. His movie might be good, like The Last Duel. The movie might be absolutely terrible, like Napoleon. So you've got that problem with Ridley Scott, but the one thing he always has.
He's also really old now, by the way, guys. People do not understand. Like, let me check what his fucking age is. He was born in 1937, guys. He was born in 1937. So I'll just put that out there.
Yeah,
I mean,
like, he would already have been like fucking almost in his 70s by the time he made Gladiator.
I mean, he did have some. He's had a good run of movies, though. I mean, The Kingdom of Heaven director's cut is very good. The Counselor is obviously
you love that.
very like you know, deep love of mine, because it was written by Cormac McCarthy and is great. So, and I thought his direction in that was good.
I mean, look, what I will say about Gladiator 2 is there's nothing wrong with the way it's shot composition. You know, like it's not static, it's not flat. It's got everything you would expect from not just a competent filmmaker, but a visionary filmmaker. The problem it has is Gladiator 2 compared to Gladiator 1. In Gladiator 2, there's not really any interesting shots in it, except from when Hanno is in the afterlife. And it's like he's looking up at the water in the sky and stuff. Those shots are really well done. That's like very cinematic. It looks almost like a throwback to like a different time of filmmaking. But everything else is, you know, it's good. It's above average. But for Ridley Scott, you're always expecting him to pull something out. Now in Gladiator, it's got that. It's absolutely got that. I think about like the first panorama when you come through the Colosseum for the first time. That's just a fucking mega shot. And again, it doesn't look CGI or anything like that. I don't even know if it was. I don't know if they actually
I
built
think
that
they had some
motherfucker,
like
but
things when they did the big like sky shots, maybe, you know. It's like
Well,
that. It's one of those ones we use shots to tricks and stuff, you know.
I mean, some of the shots were so good that he just reused the exact same shots in Gladiator 2. For example,
that's also one of the worst things when that's one thing I actually do think is amateurish. I think this is one of the best directors ever. There's scenes where he, like a 70s movie, just literally plays the first movie. Like, what? You're not even having like a voice come to in his mind. You just show me like, in grainy footage, like I did this. That's from the first film. You're just reusing footage and the music, as we said in past episodes.
The worst thing Gladiator could do is have a retelling of Gladiator 1 with all of its iconic scenes in an animated title sequence at the start.
Bad. It's so bad.
And by the way, it's got all of the bits like fucking Joaquin Phoenix when he's like going, and he's like tasting the blood and all that. It's got all of the iconic
hard
bits.
When it started and they did that stylized animated.
And I'm like,
credits.
Here's the thing. First of all, that's absolutely ridiculous. Second of all, it is super lazy in any sequel to do previously on, right? Like, you don't do that, homie, and definitely don't make it into a cartoon if you need to do it. And then third of all, you do not benefit from comparison to the first movie. Shut the fuck up. Don't talk about it. Proximity is not your friend in this.
But like, literally, it's some of the exact same shots. So, for example, when they first go to Rome, in both movies and they see the Colosseum, there is a flyover shot, and Adanian, our editor, you're great. Put these side by side right here. There's a flyover shot of the Colosseum that is actually just the same shot from the first film in the second film. Even some of the fights have the same shots. So famously, there's when Russell Crowe, I think it's his last fight when he's in the North African arena before he goes to Rome. He fights that gauntlet of like 6 or 7 other gladiators. And at the end, there's a guy in a boar's mask, and he takes the 2 swords and he decapitates him by crossing his arm with the 2 swords and then chopping his neck. That same shot is done with Lucius Verus in the second movie. I'm like, we're recycling action choreography now?
I mean, this is the other aspect to the sequel. It just shows how utterly redundant it was to ever make it. I mean, it's like there isn't even anything original about it that, like, you know, if you're going to make a sequel to an all-time great movie, there has to be a desire in some aspect to top that movie, to have a scene that beats that movie. In fact, I would go so far as to say, given that ultimately a lot of Hollywood sequels, the premise is always we remake the same movie but better because the first was a success, and so now we've got a bigger budget. There was a spirit of, like, you know, think about Ridley Scott, Aliens. Well, what if there was loads of them? That's essentially the premise. And you go from making a haunted house movie on a low budget, super tight, to making a big blockbuster action movie. Both fucking, you know, both are amazing films. You've got with Ridley Scott doing a sequel here direct to one of his films, because obviously it was James Cameron that did Aliens. He's got to want to beat Gladiator. Where is that? Where is the premise of?
It's actually the same story notes. It's literally man's wife dies, man gets enslaved after conflict, man goes to Rome to fight in the gladiator arena, man has gladiator mentor who's helping him. They are using the gladiator arena to get to their true target, and then they have some love interest on the way. It even goes so far as to copy the failed coup. That's the whole thing about Gladiator 1 is you think the coup is actually going to work, but nope, it doesn't. It was sniffed out, and now you're just fucked, and you're shanked, and you're fighting in the arena. It's exactly the same storyline, but fucking worse.
Yes, and that's what I mean. It's like redundant is the only word I can think for the film.
But the way they also, unlike how you were saying about Gladiator, like the best hope you have in Gladiator 2 is stuff like fucking Denzel Washington or Derek Jacobi, you know, the more central figure. Like the side characters don't have any of the little bits, like that part with that like fucking massive like German guy in the first film. Obviously he's a prick to him first of all, Maximus, but then he has that heroic death where he sort of like holds the fucking door open and stuff so they can all like escape the prison or whatever. Like that's fucking bother. You don't even have like a massive amount of character development or lines from that guy, but you care about that guy dying at the end. He has like his own heroic redemptive death. It's fucking baller. And even the whole thing of like that they obviously the coup does get discovered and doesn't work, and all those people are fucked as well. Like that hits so hard in Gladiator. In Gladiator 2, that doesn't work. Like sadly, here's why I actually didn't think Gladiator 2 had to be shit. Because when I heard, oh, it's like 20 years later and it's got like Denzel Washington, I thought, oh, right, that's what they're playing to. They're trying to separate it from Gladiator 1 and be like, this is just in the same universe, but this is a different story later. And then what we're going to do is we're going to let Pedro Pascal and fucking Denzel Washington go to work. They can have their own characters. Maybe it'll be something else. Maybe it'll be Game of Thrones intrigue or something. And it's just, like we say, almost beat for beat Gladiator 1. That's the part I don't get. It's like, I agree with you. It's just redundant, mate. It's like, what was the point?
Well, also, let's also talk about one aspect. We talk about it quite a lot in these episodes, but let's talk about the score. And again, let's contrast that Gladiator 1 and Gladiator 2.
That's also what's offensive, by the way. Here's the thing. When you do the refrain, obviously things like Superman and Star Wars have done this a million times. You can use it well. That keeps reminding me of how shit this movie is compared to Gladiator 1, though. Because remember, the score is, by the way, that Hans Zimmer score of that first film is one of the best soundtracks ever.
It's the
so
theme.
good.
It's the dun,
so
dun,
good.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. It's that one, right?
You will honor him or whatever, like all those. Oh, they're fucking epic, mate. They're baller as fuck. Yeah, they're really, really good score.
I mean,
and they just keep reusing it like a remix or something. It's mad.
I mean,
but it does compare it unfavorably
well.
because the leitmotif when it comes up and it's Maximus doing heroic things, and then you're like, oh, it's Hanno. I don't give a like everything that movie does just rips away what made Gladiator 1 so good and makes you question why you like Gladiator 1.
No, this is basically like Gladiator: The Force Awakens.
Yeah. Yeah. It's absolute. It's
the ultimate insult I could ever give the film.
Like, I mean, get this: the guy who did the score for Gladiator 2 is a dude called Harry Gregson Williams, and he did both Ridley and Tony Scott's movies. He's like their go-to dude if they can't get anyone really good. And so just since these are the movies he's done in the 2020s, he's done the score for that live-action Mulan remake. Right? Okay, yeah, perfect. He did.
So he's also the guy that you get when you can't get Lin-Manuel Miranda, is what you're saying.
Yes. Yes.
That's not even a bad analogy. This also reminds me in that sense of when they remade the fucking Lion King as like still an animated, but now it's 3D. That's a shit. That does the same thing. It does beat for beat, and then the beats don't hit like the first film, and you go, what are you doing? By the way, I'm even saying that as an extreme example because the other one's a fucking cartoon with singing in, but I'll tell you what, it's still way better than like CGI'd one. That's nothing.
Also, by the way, just on a side note, Hans Zimmer won an Oscar for the score of The Lion King.
Anyway.
Yeah, right. Meg 2, the sequel to The Meg,
okay,
and the Chicken Run movie that came out last year. So this is the thing. So again, we lose, right? So let me get this straight, Ridley. We lose Hans Zimmer, right, doing an iconic score. You're going to get a hack to come in and bastardize parts of Hans Zimmer's iconic score, and everything he adds is garbage and slop, and we're in the desert, so ladies need to scream. And that's where, I mean, it is fucking garbage. The score in Gladiator 2 is good. I literally just slop. I've watched it twice since November, and I cannot remember a single thing from it. The music in Gladiator, the fucking bit, dude, when he's in Elysium, just fucking, it's the shit. It's the fucking shit. It's so not perfect for everything you want.
You can literally just in your mind hear the music as his hand is like passing over the top of the wheat.
Wait,
you know?
Oh, I'm just throwing this out there now. This has been one of those unstructured episodes. Why would they end Gladiator 2 with that scene? You're not even dead, Hanno. What is happening?
By the way, that's even what's so weird. I actually thought even on that scene, they're going to do it where somehow he like meets like Russell Crowe in the after, and it's nothing. It's just like, no, actually they just was in a place that looked like Elysium. Like, what? That also cuts down the whole film.
It's pretty big, that Elysium.
The opening speech was, if you find yourself walking in fields of you're in Elysium. No, actually, just at the end of Gladiator 2. Just watch out for Gladiator 3 or something. I don't know. Fucking who knows this point? Who knows?
Gladiator 3, where Rome still doesn't become a republic for the third time.
Maybe Elysium's just getting over some really bad bushfires or something.
Oh, they even really do. That's now you remind me, that annoys me more, because the implication at the end is that they do just turn Rome into like not a republic.
No, but like, so get this as well. Look, like, oh, this is just basic.
It's so
writing.
mad, innit?
It's basic writing, guys. So he sees his wife go off with the ferryman, which, by the way, I don't even think that's culturally appropriate for like. Would he believe that if he was raised in Numidia? Would he know? Would he have a concept of the ferryman?
He left
still?
when
I
he
don't
was
know, probably.
12. He would have had a concept of it.
Okay, maybe. I'll let that one slide. So
he knows Virgil. He knows some shit.
Which, don't get me started on that. Don't get me started on them ruining. Right, okay. So he watches her go off with the ferryman, right? And she says, "I will wait for you." And then he does the fucking, funnily enough, talking about Kevin Smith, the fucking Jane Silent Bob Strike Back. He literally does the justice. He does the fucking justice on his knees. So he's devastated about her, right? So surely at the end, he's not dead and also hasn't avenged her, right? Okay, bit of a problem when you do meet up in the afterlife. Oh, so did you get revenge for me being? Nah, listen, he was a good guy actually. That dude who fucking fired an arrow into your fucking
the
chest.
The emperor told me it was okay to kill him, but I decided not to. So the Praetorian Guard just did it instead.
And not only did I decide not to kill him, after he was killed, I did a monologue about what a great man he was. Now listen, can I have sex with you now in the afterlife? Oh, no, that's that. Your relationship's over. But anyway, so at the end with Elysium, why you've got to show her. He's got to be thinking about her on some level, right? He's thinking about Maximus, is he? Wicked, brilliant. What was the point of her? What was the point? The whole thing was a revenge story about her. She doesn't come back. She fucks off with the ferryman, and then he just realizes her murderer is actually an okay dude. That's the most mental revenge story I've ever seen. Like, just at least, I mean, the ending of Gladiator 2 comes out of nowhere, by the way. It just ends abruptly. And obviously, Ridley Scott is in interviews now going, well, of course we could do a Gladiator 3. Do not do a Gladiator 3 under any circumstances, you mad old cunt. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Stop saying he was a replicant and don't do Gladiator 3. It has to stop, Ridley.
I do have bad news for you. This movie has made like $500 million already, so there's almost certainly going to be a Gladiator.
I know.
The real question is, why did everyone go see this movie?
Well, you know why? Because nostalgia's a motherfucker, isn't it? It's like, think about the times in which we live, and like Duncan said, you just wouldn't make Gladiator now. It just wouldn't be, as he called it, masculinity porn now. It wouldn't be that, right? And obviously, like, the dark secret about the inner workings of, like, traditional men, particularly traditional working class men, is, yeah, we all do want to die in some mad, fucked up way, where we're, like, dying for a noble cause.
Think about his
fantasy.
This is the ultimate masculine death. He dies avenging his family and in battle and for a higher cause, all at the same time. He's got the trifecta.
Every time when I'm there gooning about 100%. My own death, that's the ultimate death. That's the one I want. That's the goon death for all men.
That is actually one of those things that shows you how different men and women are, because women apparently don't get this like trope, but men all will instinctively know what I mean. There is a weird male fantasy of being the guy where there's like a troop of you who are escaping, and one guy has to go, I'll hold them off while you go. To be that guy, you would think, no, you don't want to be that guy. Like, you want to be the guy. No. To be that guy is glorious. And if you can't understand why that's glorious, there's something about masculinity you just don't get, because that instinct just speaks to men. It just does.
Key, one of the best fucking things that I've ever seen to play on that trope was, let me just get the right movie, because unfortunately it's in a franchise. It is, I think it's in Skull Island, right? Kong, Skull Island, where one of the guys, it's funnily enough, it's the dude who plays Nucky Thompson's brother Eli in Boardwalk Empire. They're all running away from like some dinosaur, and he goes, don't worry guys, I've got this. He's doing the whole thing. He gets out the grenades and he goes, come on, take me, thinking it's going to eat him and it'll blow it up. And the fucking dinosaur just sweeps him away with his tail. He flies on against the mountainside. All of his body is broken and fucked, and then he just blows up. For nothing. for
That's
nothing.
funny.
but obviously, you can't play on that trope if it's not a trope. And why are tropes tropes? Tropes are tropes because they are representative of fantasies and the inner workings of the mind. Look, I've said this before. One of my guilty pleasure movies just is The Last Samurai. It's a train wreck of a film. It's another. I think Billy Connolly plays an Irishman in it. It's a mess. It's a mess of a movie, right? It's white savior up the ass. It's ridiculous. But let me tell you, that last scene,
great.
That last scene where they're getting machine gunned down in their fucking bamboo armor, I'll cry every time, motherfucker. I don't care. I cry every time. Not only do I cry every time, I wish I was there. Like, I wish that was me. I wish that was me. And like fucking, it's ridiculous. Now, of course, men feel that way. Like it's fucking, and that is what Gladiator did. Like it's no coincidence. I've told this story before as well. We had that movie on pirated VHS the minute we could get it, or we bought it off some dodgy knockoff guy who did the pirate movie. Me and my mates, we used to sit in our house where we lived at university. About fucking 6 of us living in a big house, and we were to get primed for a night out when we were doing our pre-game, doing our pre-drinks. We would just put on Gladiator, and it even got to the point where we just knew all the bits to fast forward to. We could go to 38 minutes, mate. We just knew it, and we would just watch all of the fucking bits, the fucking severed head being lobbed out. We that was our mindset when we went out for a night out. The film is fucking mega. It's everything you want. It's just a great movie. Not like Gladiator 2.
It's just the comparison watching them back to back was just shocking, man.
It was horrifying, actually, because at least the first time I watched it, I went to the cinema to see it, and so you don't have the benefit. Gladiator's better, but you don't have the exact direct comparison. Did both of them last night before recording this, and I was just like, it just made Gladiator 2 so much worse. Like, it just made it so much worse. I mean, look, if I had to say something good about Gladiator 2, right, and there is no need to say anything good, for me, it's an irredeemable piece of shit. And any of these film critics that put it on their best of lists, like Mark Commode, I think, said it was a good film. It's like,
the most shocking is Christopher Nolan said it was his film of the year. Film of the year. Which just means, by the way, here's the translation for that, Monty. I just really love Ridley Scott and I respect him as a filmmaker. Yes. So, like, listen, old man, like, you can have. If you give me sodium pentothal and tie him to a chair, Richard, I can make him say that wasn't true. I guarantee you it.
I also think he was secretly hyping.
As a joke, even though I like this film, I'm self-aware enough to do this joke. Ridley Scott should say, "Well, that's a great compliment from the man who made Tenet." That would be the fucking the straight fire backhanded compliment, wouldn't it? Like, exactly. I see you, motherfucker. I see you.
I do think that Christopher Nolan has ulterior motives, because by complimenting this film, it props up his Odyssey film, which is obviously not the same time period.
Timing, isn't it? I know, exactly. Coincidental timing.
Just to be clear, and that's real. Why, Nolan? Why?
Just to be clear, there is a 1,500-year time difference between the Odyssey, when the Odyssey is supposed to have happened. Obviously, it didn't really happen, but when it was supposed to have happened, the time period in about which it was written, and the time of Gladiator 2. But as we've shown with Swords and Sandals, it all kind of, the ancient world is kind of just gets condensed into one thing. So I do think he did have an ulterior motive for praising this movie.
I'm really looking forward to the scene in Odyssey where Circe turns to Odysseus and says, maybe love is the unknown force in the universe, and like she's naked for some reason. I just can't deal with it, man. What the fuck is Nolan on right now? Like, it makes me so sad. But save that for another time. We will do the Nolan arc probably at some point. But anyway, so
he'll give Penelope a love interest in that 10-year time period, which will just actually ruin the Odyssey.
It's going to be so bad. It's actually going to be his worst film by a country. I can just sense it. I can feel it in the future. The timeline is like breaking apart. But anyway, so if I had to say something good about Gladiator 2, the best thing about this movie is, of course, Denzel Washington. He is actually the best thing in the movie. He's the only guy that actually commands your attention.
Here's the thing, though, Richard. Even he has scenes though where he's just like being the guy from Training Day, like doing all like what? Why? Yeah, sometimes he does go a bit over the top in those one-on-one scenes with that like fucking guy. Like,
perhaps your luck might change, shall we say, double or quits.
some of those just do like
that old queen.
Man. Yeah, I know, it's so ridiculous.
I think the funny thing is that Like you guys pointed out in Gladiator 1, they used a lot of classically trained British actors to fill out the supporting cast. So him just rocking up with his American accent is pretty weird. It feels pretty out of place in this film.
Sure. I'll also just say one thing, and then we'll get back to Denzel. This is how lazy the casting for Gladiator 2 actually was. Now, some people might know who he is, but there's a guy called Omid Jalali, and he is like an Iranian comedian, a British Iranian comedian, and he obviously has been quite famous and done a lot of British TV and had like comedy specials and whatnot over here. And they had him in Gladiator in a very small cameo where he played a slave trader, because he's a big flamboyant, character. He leans into his Middle Eastern, roots and persona, and so they thought he'd be good for that movie. Now he's in it for a little bit, and it's not perfect. It's just a light little speck of comic relief. We've cast a comedian for a bit of comic relief, just a bit of levity in a heavy movie, and then we'll move on and we don't see him again. Fantastic. Don't mind that at all. Celebrity cameos can be interesting in films, right? Like, just one of those things. So what do you do in Gladiator 2? Remember when we cast a comedian in a small role and everyone went, that's funny. Oh, God, it's him. Yeah. And then we all moved on and we just made a straight fire movie. What if we take George fucking Dawes, Matt Lucas, literally playing the George Dawes character?
It's probably because, Richard, he's probably on Ozempic. I had to do a double take that they actually had the comedian you're talking about. If you don't know Monty, this isn't even just like a, someone with like a Bill Hicks type guy with polemic interest. This is one of the most one-note shitter comedians ever to come out of the UK. He did a show called Little Britain, which the joke is now, even though he's woke, would be cancelled 8 billion times over if you put on episode 1 today.
Blackface,
it's the most
mocking the disabled
humor ever.
Yes.
Like literally some of the scenes, Monty, unironically, the running gag is this guy's just mentally disabled. That's the gag. And that guy is the guy that they put in trying to copy that, the guy inside the arena who's doing welcome to the, which by the way, the guy is also way better in Gladiator 1 for that too. Entering the ground, the hordes of fucking Hannibal or whatever. That guy kills that performance. He fucking nails it. But the guy they bring in is such a joke if you know him from the UK. It's so jarring, Richard, to see him in the movie.
I know. So he's just there, crowned up to the max. And by the way, the character he had on Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer's Big Night Out, right?
Oh no, but
George, he would smack, and he did it on, what was that other one? Shooting Stars. What he does is he would bang the drums and then he would shout. He would, and they would be like, righto. We put on a silly voice and go, so this team has got these many points and this team has that many points. It was just like the stupid thing they put in because Vic and Bob are like surrealist comedians. So all right, whatever, in that environment, you let it go. You wouldn't think the cast of a Hollywood movie to do it, especially because what they were clearly trying to copy was HBO's Rome, that fucking legendary actor who obviously plays the town crier and who basically is an in-world narrator for everything that's going on in the background.
He does a really good job,
Fantastic. Everybody fucking emulates him. He's like a fucking... So Matt Lucas doing that is an atrocity.
It is.
It's an atrocity. Because he's just doing George Dawes.
I deleted that from my brain now. You've just made me remind it again.
And as I said, okay, it's a cameo, surely. He comes back again and again and again. And he is just the in-Coliseum announcer for the second half of the movie.
By the way, I'm just going to say this. Is there anyone in Gladiator 2 doesn't know every time whether the thumb's going up or down? Is there anyone? It's so fucking telegraphed. It's mental, bro.
By the way, that dude who plays the Emperor, I get them mixed up. What was he called? Khaki Pants?
Caracalla.
Right. Yeah, him. Khaki Pants, right? They obviously told that dude, you've got to give me some Joaquin Phoenix style fucking theatrics here, right? And he's doing it where he's going, the gods, oh the gods, doing this and his thumbs in the air, like he's just catching the vapors, oh the gods,
I think
beam me the fuck up, man.
The gods have spoken!
I think it's easy, though, to fall into that trap because Joaquin Phoenix playing Commodus in Gladiator 1 is clearly a very ridiculous character. I mean, the noises he's making, the soap opera level reactions, the weird tongue shit, but all of those sequences are balanced out by his quiet, dangerous calculation and his insidiousness.
And crucially, while his theatrics might be cartoonish at times, behind the scenes, we know he is rejected by his father and he feels like emasculate and terrible by that. It's quite some sensitive, poignant scenes there. We also know
he says that thing about, I wrote to you about the virtues, and then I realized I had none. But you feel for him in that moment. That was like an abandoned boy in a way.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
With you.
What is this enemy you hate so much? All I've ever wanted was to live up to Caesar. Father.
Exactly. And then, obviously, he gets rejected by the woman as well. He's got that ridiculous line where he says, I would slaughter all of the world if you would only love me, right? Like, which just shows this sort of inverse proportion to he wants to be adored. He wants to be loved,
I don't even use that.
He doesn't understand the mechanisms to do it.
That is actually an insult, mate. That actually is. Like, that's why he became a hit
an
of women,
incel before we had incels, essentially.
Yeah.
But I mean, he even says stuff that is more subtle, such as, he is so sure of himself when he's chiding Gracchus, Derek Jacobi, and the senators. He's saying, no, I understand the Roman people. They want love. They are my children, and I am the father, despite the fact that he has no kids, right? So he has no perspective on that experience. And indeed, his own father-son relationship was fucked up, as admitted to by his own father before he murdered him, right?
Think about this as well. Think about how he's able to, like you say, in private, he kind of is a coward and he can be a bitch and a fucking loser. But when he's like in his emperor aspect, his presence is fucking crazy. He has mad aura with those senators when he's in the Colosseum. When he's with the fucking people he's essentially holding captive. Like, his aura is terrifying. He nails it.
And the question of, like, should I dissolve the Senate? Should I kill these people? But even that's seen as a step too far. And he doesn't, very crucially, he doesn't end up doing that in the movie. Whereas in this movie, they took all of the rumors of Roman excess and then they didn't even turn it up to 11. They turned it up to like 20. And it's like, oh, well, Caligula was supposedly thinking about having his horse be a consul. What if we just made the monkey a consul?
Citizen Dondas! Hail Dondas!
And by the way, guys,
just unreal, isn't it?
I can't. Again, I'm not going to go too much into history, but like the Praetorian Guard did kill a lot of emperors who they didn't like. It wasn't easy to stay in power as the emperor unless people were on your side. And if you were acting like a fucking crazy person, you would be killed almost immediately in that position, right? Caligula, people say, was a bad emperor. He was kind of character assassinated after his death. I think most scholars these days agree that Caligula probably was a pretty okay emperor. But anyway, Caracalla was not. Caracalla is actually thought of as one of the worst emperors. But I mean, it's so over the top and unbelievable, and it just becomes stupid. And also the two emperors, they just have one note. There is no subtlety to the villain. There's no subtlety.
There is no comparative scene to when Joaquin Phoenix is like trying to win the love of his father and saying, I understand I'm a disappointment. There's no motivation for them being these crazy assholes.
Yeah, and it's also
one
just like,
might have syphilis.
Rome corrupts you, and so they are just corrupted by Rome, and so this is just how it is in Rome. And it's like, come on, there's no interesting aspects to these characters at all. They're just cartoon characters that are in this fucking movie, and they're terrible.
And they're terrible, and they look terrible. The makeup is terrible. They're just walking around. They look like end-stage fucking HIV patients. Like, I don't even know what the fuck that is. They look like zombies, mate. They're fucking sick. They look ill. I don't know if that's deliberate choice, but like, you wouldn't paint yourself up like that.
They did have very pale makeup, I think, at that time, like lead-based makeup.
Sure. But I mean, we all know about you made the skin paler because it was meant to be comparative to a statue or something like that. But the bags under the eyes, what's that? Like, you look like a fucking, you look ill. You look like, put it this way, I would read you the last rites if I came into a fucking room and saw you like that. Like, I'd get a priest. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know what the fuck that was about. But then, obviously, as well, they are just crazy assholes. They are just crazy assholes. Nobody would support them. Nobody would go along with their ideas.
And there was an emperor, but it's not like the Senate didn't have power. You know what I mean? It's not like the Senate didn't kill people.
The Senate, by the way, all of that political intrigue in the background of the first movie, in the second movie, which, by the way, there was a little bit of that. It wasn't like overblown, but the Senate as well. But you had obviously a lot of interesting conversations between those side characters. There's just none of that here. There's just none of that here. The Senate just seems to be some redundant. Much like this movie, they just seem to be redundant. You have no input in this at all, do you?
I know what you mean, because essentially this is the caricature. They're making every emperor of Rome the fucking god emperor of Dune who's like insurmountable. No, the best example ever to explain how power works like that is in fucking Game of Thrones season 1, where it's revealed that the way you actually have the coup is if you have the gold for the guards. So because the Lannisters pay the guards, that's why Ned Stark gets betrayed. He had the right reason to do it, but they were paid. The point is, same in Rome. If you're the senators who have all the fucking generals who have the Roman soldiers, mate, who are they going to fight you with? It's actually the stupidest thing about, if people don't know, even in England, it's the same thing. People think kings were god emperors. Kings had to like do stuff like get taxed to have money to have a war. They didn't sit on all the money. The money was just like everyone had the money, and they were just richer than you and had that status. Like people have this really weird version of history in their mind.
They also had to have the other lords and nobles either like them
it's the same concept. Like the senators, they keep them in check.
Or both.
They keep them in check.
Because otherwise, when you went to your wars, it's not like you controlled a great army. You had to be hey, Duke, can I have some guys, please, to fight this war?
You call in the bannermen, and then they come under that guy, under this guy, and then they all come exactly. But it's not
as a Crusader Kings player, it's a pain I know all too well. You got to keep them motherfuckers on side.
But like, and especially,
go on, keep going.
In this era, the Praetorian Guard was extremely powerful because the legions weren't allowed in Rome. So literally you had to be friends and take care of the elite military force, because they were the easiest. It's the easiest way to depose you is just to get if the Praetorian Guard don't like you or they get paid off, you're just going to die. Like that's
remember, Monty, that's the whole premise of why being Caesar was different from just being the head politician, because it's the idea you would dare to bring the troops back into like the capital, for example, and you'd have like the fascistic dictatorship. Because by the way, please stop using the word fascism to describe people who have no military power over the citizenry. Like you are just meaning I don't like that leader who I think made a bad decision. Like you don't even understand the essence. If you don't know, by the way, fasci are on every fucking American symbol in all of your buildings, because it's all based on the idea of like people banding together around like a leader that strolls and shit. Like, so already that's another angle that's nonsense. By the way, one other person that we didn't even mention here, this just shows the contrast between the two films. When I remind you of this, you'll instantly remember it. And I remember he's a total bit player, and what an epic death he has. The guy called Cicero, who has that scar on his face in Gladiator 1, and then he at the end, because sadly the kid has fucking revealed the plot because they're gonna kill his mum otherwise. You think Maximus is meeting up with him to do the coup, and then they do that thing where he does that bird like, and then he gets killed by those arrows. Like, mate, that destroys you.
Maximus! I'm sorry.
No! Oh, another thing as well about this first film, the fucking set design. Think about the two masks you remember in this movie. Maximus's mask is the fucking MF Doom mask, if you don't know, guys. It is iconic. Then there's which leads to the whole, who are you, Spaniard or whatever. Then there's the one that fucking guy, Tigris of Gaul had, who was the only undefeated gladiator that they bring back. You remember that? Because they even tried to show one like that in Gladiator 2. You know that like fucking, that special like lion's
it comes down, it's got the teeth.
That one. So cool. It's ball of that mask.
Yeah. By the way, I'd love to host an esports event wearing that.
It's dope as fuck, isn't it? It's aesthetic is so cool, especially obviously if you're a man, by the way. You're going to love that shit. It's so dope.
I mean, they built out all of those sets, including half a Colosseum in Malta that then they use CGI to like build the rest of it. Okay. But I've actually seen some of
the better event in Malta than ESL. Okay, fair enough.
But I've actually seen some of the Gladiator sets in real life because they're still in Morocco. to this day. So there's a town in the Moroccan desert called Ouarzazate that does a lot of film shootings for like desert movies, and it's outside, and they just let you wander all over the old sets. And some of the sets of like the Gladiator school and the North Africa scenes are still there, like 25 years after this movie was released. I think I went and saw them in 2019, but you can go there and see them. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, look, I love shit like that because, it's like increasingly people don't put the effort into films, you know? It's like, it's cool that the Lord of the Rings trilogy, just Hobbiton is just still there. You can just go to fucking Bag End. It's just a fucking place you can go and visit. They never took it down. I think that's wicked because you get an idea about the level of effort that went into creating these worlds, and the reason it feels like a organic, lived-in world on the screen is they made it. They built it. It wasn't just some throwaway CGI garbage, you know? And it's
just wait in 20 years when they're remaking Lord of the Rings and you get to see Tom Holland as Frodo Baggins.
I'll be dead. Zendaya as Galadriel. Yeah. I'll be dead.
Of course.
No, but look, so just to quickly go back to Denzel Washington's performance in Gladiator 2. Like I say, he's the best thing about the movie. I don't think it's a particularly good Denzel Washington performance.
No, but he's one of the greatest living actors, so it's got a high bar.
Exactly. So is he phoning it in? Kind of, maybe a little bit. I think there's just like enough. There's enough here for me to say that actually it was a good performance. There's this like hint. He plays a character called Macrinus, who was he's a former criminal who became a gladiator, who then earned his freedom and now owns gladiators, which is another interesting part because one of the things that really pissed me off is they did that quote that's famously misattributed to Cicero, which is a slave dreams not of freedom but of the original one they attribute to him is a slave dreams not of freedom but of being a master, and then it got bastardized and muddied down into a slave dreams not of freedom but of having his own slaves. And so anyway, they use that, and Denzel Washington goes Cicero, right? And it's like, no, there's no evidence to say Cicero said those things.
The slave dreams not of freedom but of a slave to call his own. Cicero.
But it is kind of an interesting paradigm that we've talked about in the ancient world before, that if you ever did gain your freedom, even if you would come from the barbarity of slavery, you didn't reject that as a premise. You then went, well, it's my turn now. So, so they were on that.
That's just how the ancient world worked, man. Like, society would not have worked without a gazillion slaves. I don't know what to tell you. You think you think that Rome was built by people getting paid? Fuck
and
no.
I like that the film resisted the modern urge to maybe, it's Denzel Washington, we should probably like make him he treats his gladiators like slaves, treats them like shit, and sees people as commodities, which of course anyone at that time that had a bit of wealth and opulence would. So I love his bisexuality implication.
Females were not his taste.
No, mine some days.
No, yours.
His flirtatious nature every time.
It was done better in Spartacus by
Grax.
that scene that was added later.
Of course, but like obviously for Denzel Washington, who famously at one point wouldn't even kiss women on screen. Because he said he didn't want to disrespect his wife this way. I thought, it's that classic brave performance thing that the phrase people use. He's the best thing about the film. Every time he was on the scene, I like kind of leant forward in the chair a little bit. 'Cause it's like, right, I'm captivated again right now. And okay, it's Pedro Pascal. Well, back to sleep. So the only good thing in Gladiator 2 is Denzel Washington's performance, and I will just add though, they don't even play his death outright, because he ends up having a fight with Lucius, Hanno, and the main guy, who, by the way, is the hardest gladiator in all of Rome at this moment in time, has just killed Praetorian guards like they were nothing, like he was having a drunken fistfight on a night out. And then Macrinus, who is clearly in his 60s, right? He has a fight with him, and not only is it a challenge, and he nearly kills him if it wasn't for somehow the world's hardest armor, the only armor in all of antiquity that can deflect swords properly multiple times.
Because it's the magic armor, bro. It's Maximus armor.
Yeah, I know. He uses pocket sand on him.
Yeah.
Stop
By the way,
all of this.
that's even a contrast, Richard, of how badly it's done. The genius of Gladiator 1 is how is Commodus, who we've seen as a coward, how is he possibly a 1v1 him? Because he secretly stabs him and then has people cover it up. And then Maximus doesn't want to like be a bitch and go, hey, stab me, everyone. So he just accepts that. That makes it so you can have like a parity between the two of you. You can't, I agree with you. The second he starts winning the fight against him, Richard, it's like, what even is this?
Like,
what is this?
I was laughing at the end when 60-year-old Denzel Washington is like going toe-to-toe with this guy in his late 20s. It's so ridiculous. But I mean, all of the fight sequences are so ridiculous. Like we said, maybe the first one isn't that bad, but can we discuss, if you just compare the concept of the fights from Gladiator 1. First off, the fights in Gladiator 1 felt real, like real possible gladiatorial fights. When he's fighting that champion, yes, they did have tigers in the pits that they would, loose from the caverns below, right? And there is a whole structure of chambers below for these magic elevators and all this stuff that they would do. But can we discuss how there's a man riding a rhinoceros and controlling it in this movie? It's just so fucking absurd.
Trash. It's trash.
It's like he's got like a rhino harness and a rhino saddle, and I'm like, wow. I bet the people of East and Southern Africa would have really liked to have domesticated the rhino at some point in time.
It's funny Duncan brings up Training Day, because the ending to Gladiator 2 had to be the ending of Training Day, essentially, in the sense that you can't have Macrinus come out and just be a challenge for the greatest gladiator in all of... They didn't even do that with Joaquin Phoenix, like, at the end.
Yeah,
it would have been more plausible. They resisted the urge to do something as stupid as that. Because the point is, like, Maximus, he could only be killed by cheating. He was him.
Which is why Maximus at the end of Gladiator is astonished that Commodus wants to fight him. And then he figures out it's because he's going to get shanked, beforehand.
Yeah, exactly.
There's also a slight flaw in the premise, which, look, again, I buy in the suspension of disbelief is awesome in Gladiator 1. This isn't really a problem. It's just an analytical meta problem. It does have the same key flaw as Black Panther, which is the idea that any civilized society would be like, whoever's the best at killing someone one-on-one, they should lead.
Yeah,
like,
you should lead.
What?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the fucking maddest. That's the most primitive idea of all time. Like,
I know, it's crazy, isn't it? But yeah, so like at the end, what had to happen was it had to be Training Day. It had to be like Lucius meets up with Macrinus, and Macrinus is going, I don't want to fight you, boy. You're obviously too much of a match for me, but are you a match for my army? I've got all my homies here, right? And obviously the army that he's raised, is behind him. And then Lucius gives the speech with his Habsburg jaw and his ever-changing accent, and he goes like, we could unify Rome like Marcus Aurelius wanted to. Remember the idea of Rome? And then the army turns on him like at the end of Training Day and throws the sword down and goes, kill him yourself. And then Macrinus is put in, like this would have worked way better. Macrinus is then like, all right, well, I used to be a gladiator, and like Lucius is like, don't do this. And they go, pocket sand, and then he just gets killed immediately, and that would have been way better. would have been way better. And then all the Romans behind Macrinus, they're all sad, and then they come forward and they shake hands with the Romans in the red and the Romans in the purple, because apparently Americans need to know that it's two sides, so we've got to give them different uniforms, even though that probably wouldn't have been how it went down. And they all shake hands, and then Lucius is like, yeah, and then that's it. That's your film. Send it there.
I've mentioned this a million times, but I do subscribe to the Raymond Chandler thinking that like sequels and remakes don't actually ruin the original, because you can go watch the original, forget about it, engage with the story, and they're still just as good. It still is. It's only when you're watching the sequel that it ruins it, because then it takes the character and that character feels weird then. So the other thing about Gladiator 2 that is offensive is when I'm watching it, it makes me think, fuck that Lucius character. It was cool in the first film. He had a very small role. By the way, there's even actually a reality that Monty will find out one day about that, which is, the thing that, think about if you are actually like Commodus, who's trying to be like a stepfather to this kid, right? And then he immediately becomes the biggest fan of your enemy, right? That is like how kids are. Like, if you don't know, it's a great story for people, which is Ronaldo's kid, famously, when he started to become his favorite player is Messi. He's your dad, but because he's your dad, that he can't be your hero in the same way as the idea, So there's even like a realistic element to that, because by the way, it is ball of the way. Like, actually, I thought that's the other thing. I also thought it ruined like the purity of that relationship. Like, that was like a young kid and his idol in some way, and the scenes between him and Russell Crowe are fucking great. Yeah.
Yeah, well, now it turns out it was his bastard love child who he refused to recognize the
And
whole
then
time.
he goes like, right, now that it's the real moment, give me the armor. Like,
Yeah, exactly.
and you would think like fucking like Daughter or something, like the armor gave him like stats or something, like, plus 30. So like, what are we doing here? Like, what is this? It's like crazy. I know. It's
well,
so
as I said, when he's under the water and like Macrinus is like, yeah, and it's like it bounces off about 5 times.
No, it does.
He should have been dead. He should have been dead.
I just like how they thought that was going to be a dramatic shot of just this sword hitting an armor underwater. And it's the sound effect too, because it's like leather armor and it's making this metal like thunk, thunk, thunk.
Yeah,
it's the old joke that everyone knows. Like, why don't they make the plane out of the black box material? Why isn't everybody here wearing this armor? This armor's fucking sick.
Yeah,
I'd have that head to toe me. I'd be in a onesie.
Material.
Exactly. I'd be in a onesie. That shit.
It looks really lightweight as well and thin. It looks like the perfect armor.
It's just fucking leather as well. That's the worst. It's just a piece of leather. Like the idea of a sword. By the way, the whole premise of a Roman sword is you just stab with it, don't you? Like the idea that doesn't go through leather. Like, oh, it's blocked it. So that's like fucking adamantium there, mate.
Like basically, like he rolled on a D20. He rolled 1. Like he rolled a critical failure 5 times in a row.
I think. Look, here's the thing. I'm going to talk about a little bit of the historical stuff in this movie, not any of the like the subtle stuff, but just things that are just infuriatingly wrong, such as the water sequence sucks in the Colosseum, first off. But you know how in the first movie they introduce, because they would try and stage these like historic reenactments with gladiators. That is very historically accurate. And in the first movie, they're like, and here it is, the mighty Roman legions versus the hordes of the Carthaginian hordes of Hannibal, or whatever they say, right? And that's when all the chariots come out and okay, fine. That's accurate. The thing is, they talk about the Battle of Salamis in this movie for the scene where they flood the Colosseum. And they say it's between the Trojans and the Persians, when that is one of the most important battles in Greek history, of which the Athenian navy defeated the Persians. If you guys know, 300, right? It's the Spartans at Thermopylae. What they were doing was trying to delay the Persians so that this naval battle could occur, which is where Themistocles, the Athenian admiral, actually won that war. That was way more important. So why they're saying the Trojans are a part of this is so, like, it's just such a basic error that I just sat there dumbfounded, because not only was this battle important in that war, this is one of the most important battles in the history of the West, because if the Athenians lose this naval fight and the Persians win that war, we get nothing from classical Athens, because everything important in Athens that happened scientifically, philosophically, happened after that battle.
Maybe the director that had Napoleon firing cannons at the pyramids, maybe he plays fast and loose with some of the historical facts.
But I mean, just like it's one of those things with the script where it's like, you couldn't Google that shit. Like, it's so significant.
I'm pretty sure on the historical aspects of it, I'm pretty sure some people did tell him. But he's just like, nah, this is just more. But it's also just cinema.
They did do those kind of naval battles, but not at this time period in the Colosseum. So just think about it. You know how you saw all those chambers and like the trapdoors with the fucking tigers? They couldn't flood the Colosseum after they built that shit underneath the floors. They did before they excavated the floors and built all of the cool elevators and stuff. But once that was in, I think they just did this stuff on the Tiber. Like, they would literally just put boats in the river in the middle of Rome, and people would sit there and watch the fake naval battles. But I mean, it's just, and also the entire fight sequence is just so stupid, because he literally has an angle to ram the ship the first time, then turns it, severs all their oars, takes like 3 more volleys of arrows when he sails around the other side to then ram the ship. It's infuriating. Like, these battles are so stupid.
Every scene in the Colosseum is garbage, actually. There's not a single good fight. There's not a single good set piece. Funnily enough, the only one that is remotely interesting is the baboon one. Because it is like, yeah, they did do that, and people don't realize baboons will fuck you up. By the way, like
the CGI in the baboons is pretty bad, though. I think that's the.
I know, and also they made like this alpha baboon. Like it looks like something out of a horror movie. It just doesn't look baboon appropriate in any way, shape, or form. Like so, and also in biting a baboon. That's never not going to be funny, is it? That's never not going to be funny. But yeah, it's like that's actually the most interesting one. The CGI is garbage. The fight is garbage. It's over before there's even any real time for it. And by the way, why would you do this? So you cast the dude who gets kicked down the well in 300. I don't happen to know the actor's name to hand, but you cast the dude who gets kicked down the well in 300 as some legendary Numidian general and friend to Lucius. They inverse what happens in the first movie, where it is Lucius helping his friend heal in the boats when they're being taken into slavery to become gladiators. And then he gets there and he says, listen, I'm not going to play this out. And Lucius is going, survive a bit longer, my friend, see where things go. The first battle he is plunged into, he just sinks to his knees and gets his throat bitten out by a baboon. And just doesn't even react when it's happening. Like, there's no way even your self-preservation aspect would fucking kick in. What's happened? So one of the guys who died in one of the most iconic ways in another modern epic, right, by getting kicked down a well, you're going to do that to him, are you? Like, this is mental. Like, there is not a single good scene in the Colosseum in this. Also, what about that one at the end when she's tied up and all the senators are all around and the Praetorian Guards are just like, just killing these old men in robes?
Yeah, and by the way, who in that arena would be cool with them killing a defenseless woman?
I don't know. This is the other aspect to it. The plebs are angry the whole film. The plebs are on the edge the entire time, and yet it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And they don't ever really do anything. They're like,
it also just goes back to the Praetorian Guard, who is, by the way, literally the riot police that will have to put down the riot. But instead, they're just going to kill the woman who they know is beloved by the plebs, who will definitely start a riot that then they will die in. Okay.
Also, Lucius must never want to see another arrow again in his life. Like, arrows are the pain of his existence, mate. And kill his wife, kills Marcus Aurelius, his missus, kills fucking Pedro Pascal just as he's getting to like him. And you're in that moment, you're going, are they going to team up? Is it going to be like a buddy cop movie at the end? The general and the gladiator.
By the way, I also thought as well, Richard, that's what they were going to do the Pedro Pascal scene. It'd be like you do the classic old school good story where the good guys, like superheroes, meet and fight first, but then they team up, don't they? You turn around and you go like, hey, we're going to take on the emperors, and the crowd's on your side, and that's how you. No, instead they just have that stupid fight, like you say, then he kills him, but then simultaneously he kills him, and then but goes like, "You were a good man." I know it's
mental, isn't it? But like, so think about this as well. Think about again, HBO Rome just doing it better. Think about when Apollo gets sent to the fucking gladiatorial arena to die. Right, and basically he's meant to die in that arena. They just keep throwing warm bodies at him till he's absolutely worn down. But Apollo is hard as fuck, so he just keeps winning, even though he's like exhausted. And then he like screams for like all of the boys from the 13th Legion. He's like 13, 13, and then his fucking his mate, his sergeant, who fucking hated him, breaks into the gladiatorial arena to go back to back to fucking fight their way out of there, committing a capital crime that is in direct violation of the Emperor's will, and Caesar rewards them both for it because it mythologizes the 13th Legion. That is fucking fantastic, and I will die on that hill. But you could have had that. You could have just copied that. But no, Pedro Pascal, he doesn't even react when the arrows go in. He doesn't even say anything iconic as he dies. He's just, oh well, I'm a pincushion, fuck my life. Garbage, like. It's garbage. How do you fuck up a Rome movie? That's an even broader topic to talk about, I think. Gladiator is great because it understands all the central premises to antiquity in that time. There's a reason why Roman society is still lauded today. I know, of course, now, if you say anything good about ancient Rome, you're a right-wing fascist statue guy, as they say on Twitter. But obviously, there's lots to like about fucking ancient Rome, its values. Yes, it's a complicated society because of the nature of antiquity, and obviously they've got, essentially they went from a republic to a fucking monarchy, and it was a slave economy and all of that other stuff. Contributed some legendary ideas and philosophies and things that have echoed through eternity, you might say.
Also, the reason our country and our fucking history and our empire eventually, Richard, like we are birthed from being conquered by Rome.
I was going to say, remember, of course, as British people, we were occupied. I know it sounds like, you can't be bringing that up. It's got a huge, profound impact.
Mate, when people tell me about colonialism, I want to go, should we just go back a few years, you dickhead?
Also, I mean, just in terms of effects on...
all the time,
Just in terms of effects on modern government, I mean, people are like, ooh, Athens and democracy. Modern governments resemble much more closely Republican Rome than they do Athenian, like, direct rule democracy, which is only feasible in like a tiny city state like Athens.
So which idea did Gladiator 2 pull out of antiquity with all of its pathos, with all of its commentary, something we can learn today about how they did things then, be it good or bad, that is relevant to our society? Where is that in Gladiator 2? It's not there. Gladiator, of course, it does play for what is ostensibly just a revenge film, right? Just that plays against the backdrop of an epic movie. It's got some fucking big ideas at play. Maybe a surface level exploration of them, but they keep referring in Gladiator 2, Marcus Aurelius. The idea of Rome. We must restore Marcus Aurelius's idea of Rome, and it's like they have cast Marcus Aurelius as some sort of like Obi-Wan of Roman leaders, and everyone that comes after him is a Sith Lord or something. It's like so pathetic. It's like, no, there was still like, it wasn't like Rome just went completely to the fucking dogs after fucking Marcus Aurelius. And they keep flirting with this idea all through the movie. And it's not done well, of course, in Gladiator 2. When they're first being taken to Rome, one of the other gladiators that has been captured from Numidia turns to them and goes, I didn't think it would be this big. And it's like, well, first of all, you're not even in the city yet, mate. There's nothing big to look at. Like, you just look, it's just hills at the moment, mate. So what do you mean? What are you looking at, bro? So it's just off in terms of script. It's Rome. It's considered the center of all of civilization at this moment in time. You didn't expect it to be, checked notes, big. Like, what?
Yeah.
What?
Richard, when this movie occurred historically, the Roman Empire had like a third of the people alive under its control.
Yeah. I didn't expect Rome to be big. What, are you mental? Are you mental? I didn't expect the pyramid to be that shape. What are you saying, you fucking idiot?
Especially everybody who is around the Mediterranean would just know that Rome owned everything. They owned everything.
Just lost a war to the best drilled military ever that just rocked up on boats and sacked the last free city in Africa like it was a fucking day at the park. What are you talking about? And then the other thing as well, when they're going past and it sees the Romulus and Remus statue, and like he's talking about, yes, they were weaned, abandoned children weaned by the wolf. They have the animal within them. Bringing that thing back at any point? No? All right, then. Yeah. Sound just a history lesson for dumb Americans, I suppose. What the fuck is that?
Speaking of that, my favorite part of Gladiator 2 is how they just unnecessarily explain things for dumb people, such as when Pedro Pascal says, after the opening sequence, the opening battle, Ve Victis, woe to the conquered. I'm like, you literally just said the same thing twice.
I claim this city for the glory of Rome. Ve Victis.
Woe to the conquered.
Or also they say, I think it's one of the two emperors later, talks about his honor and his dignitas. And I'm like, we're just using Latin words and phrases and then explaining them in a way that would make no sense to anybody actually saying these words. And it is clearly just there for dumb people who can't look it up later.
Also, the scene where he quotes the Aeneid to the fucking emperors, right? And what he is saying in the quote they use is that all the bad shit you do, you know, there'll be a reckoning coming, essentially. You won't be able to atone for it. And the emperors, who would be the most educated people in Rome, would certainly, they don't recognize the quote. They have to be told by Macrinus what it is, I think. And they don't recognize, not only did they not recognize the quote, even if they didn't recognize the quote, even if somehow the emperor of Rome didn't know who Virgil was, right? They don't even understand what he's saying to them. You would have been executed on the spot. There's an implication of corruption and vengeance. By the way, these people just they're just bloodthirsty lunatics.
By the way, Richard,
by the way, that's actually something we forgot. One of the most iconic lines we didn't even mention Gladiator 1. What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Yes.
What we do in life echoes in eternity.
Which, by the way, basically is like the summary of the fucking film. That's why it's a fucking dope-ass film, innit?
Mm-hmm. and I also thought about the Virgil point. And I mean, to your point, Thorin, like that is then just quoted into the ground in Gladiator 2.
That becomes like a catchphrase or something. I know, it's bad in it. I know.
But as for the Virgil quote, what I thought was so funny is that quote was the one that they chose to paint around the top of the ceiling in Lucius's childhood bedroom. I was like, who the fuck does that? Why that quote for a kid's bedroom?
Yeah, remember this. Remember the Aeneid. By the way, you also will have no problems with your father, who essentially abandoned you, didn't recognize you while you were alive, and you will actually travel back to Rome one day to live out his legacy because he good. Guy who kills your wife, good. Everyone's good.
Richard, this actually links to something we were talking about before we start the episode. But they could have even had a scene where he just said to Connie Nelson, "Why he didn't love me?" He could have done the Will Smith, couldn't he?
I know,
the Fresh Prince.
Why you don't want me, man?
Mate, if I later on, look, it's one thing if it was just some cool ass gladiator who I sort of looked up to and he represented my masculine ideal. If I later on find out, as you say, Richard, he's my dad, he had another family and a kid at the same time, and he never planned on ever seeing me, talking to me, and he didn't even tell me he was his fucking dad when I met him. Like, I think I might have some resentment issues against him. I don't know if I just become him at that point, you know.
It's like, and again, that's what I mean. It's like, first of all, as we talked about before, I think it was on the last episode when we did Troy, and I was talking about the Nick Cave script, which was so interesting compared to what we got in Gladiator 2. The sequel to Gladiator Nick Cave wanted to make was Maximus is brought back from the dead, has to travel through time and eventually, like, kill Christ or something.
I would literally watch this film, Richard, though. I would be in for that. You know what I mean? I'm in.
Wouldn't miss that for the world. Like, 100%. That's so mental. I'm about that, right? But like, you could have made an interesting Gladiator 2 movie. Like, what if why not have Lucius actually resent his Roman heritage? That's just never a thing. He hides it, he cloaks it because he's been told if anyone ever finds out you're a descendant of Marcus Aurelius, your life will be in trouble. But at no point is he resentful of the fact that his own father denounced him. He was smuggled out of the city he grew up in, cast out to Numidia, where he's just fighting in wars against his own country.
I also don't get that part, Richard. I kept thinking, that's why I actually thought in this film, when they made him his son, it made even less sense, because the whole thing of like, I have to send you away from Rome, it's too dangerous here, goes off to like a place that Rome is going to come and fuck up in a war. You should have been dead. Like, that's over. You're obviously safer if it's like the Gladiator, you got to keep the enemies close, sort of thing, haven't you? Like, this mental in it. The whole premise doesn't work. Doesn't work.
Just zero, just not conflicted on any level about his Roman heritage, even as the Romans come, sack the city and kill his wife. Not a problem. I will go back to Rome. I will out myself as a Roman when it is politically expedient to do so, and everyone will love me. It's like, this is mental, guys. You could have made such an interesting story here. You could have literally done essentially the inverse of Gladiator. Like, what happens if someone who resents all of Rome and all of its ideals, and indeed their own father's ideals? What if someone resented a hero that we all love so much that they want to go back and they want to like deride their name and essentially show them for, you know, they weren't a great man. They might have been a great gladiator, but they were not a great man. I am proof of that. Why not explore those ideas instead of just making Lucius an inferior carbon copy of the father that rejected him? I mean, yeah, you can see he wasn't raised by Maximus. This guy's a bitch compared to Maximus. He's got nothing going on at all. Nothing at all. It's just a dull, flat, meandering movie. Also,
and it's
by the way,
2.5 hours long for some reason.
Yeah, but dude, the fucking extended version of Gladiator is fucking 3 hours long, and
that's
you don't
fine.
care. Yeah, you don't even know. You just put Gladiator on, and you're like right the way through, and that's that. It's fucking, Gladiator 2, man. What a slog to get through. I don't know about you, but like, the second viewing hurt me. Chris Hemsworth shaved 10 years off his life so he could look ripped as Thor. I've shaved 10 years off my life watching Gladiator 2. It's absolute garbage. Like, it's mind-blowing to me. This is like a 70% movie on like Rotten Tomatoes and stuff.
Holy fuck, what? If people don't know, the reason why that outrages me is I always tell people, when you have the worst word in the world for fucking idiots is the word underrated or overrated, because they just think it depends on what their opinion is. They don't know it's actually about the general populace. I always say one of my favourite films is The Prestige, and everyone goes, that's not even underrated. It's Christopher Nolan movie. Has like a 70% rating, by the way.
Yeah.
So that's same as Gladiator 2, according to all of you.
So here you go, right? On IMDb, Gladiator 8.5. If you know how IMDb works, that's a fucking banger rating. Well done. That's the theatrical cut as well. Gladiator 2 is only a 6.6. So it is 2 worse on the arbitrary goodness scale. It is only 2 worse than Gladiator.
I wish we had Roger Ebert to review this movie for us.
Listen, as I said, I'll just go all in on Mark Commode. Mark Commode's justification for him saying Gladiator was fine is he said, it's a Gladiator movie. It's called Gladiator. It's called Gladiator 2. It's more Gladiator. What did you expect? And it's like, I expect...
That's so mad, though. Mark Commode, if you don't know, by the way, guys, has a very harsh style as well. Like, normally he'd be brutal to a film like this, you'd imagine. Yeah, what the fuck?
He's gone soft in his old age, mate. He's not the ruthless critic he used to be. But, like, what do you mean? What do I expect from Gladiator? Well, competent acting. Is that not a thing? Exciting battle scenes.
By the way, Monty, even though, look, I am actually like philosophically and morally against it, I actually think it is sort of like summoning the demon, so I don't do it personally. The joke is we really should on this show just have an AI Roger Ebert for the films that he wasn't alive to review. And it should just use all of his past reviews, and it should just use the model to say what he would do. Because if he could nail it, it would just be hilarious. Like if he was going like, cause Gladiator 1 was a bit of, like swords and sorcery, wasn't really hitting the mark I want. Russell Crowe was okay. But Gladiator 2, Denzel Washington's performance is a revelation. I'd love that if he just gave it the 2 thumbs up or something. Fucking amazing, mate. I know.
Cool story, bro. But yeah, it's just
shout out to Roger Ebert, who gave the original Gladiator 2 stars.
No way.
What?
No
he gave
way.
500 Days of Summer 4 stars. 500 Days of Summer.
You know what?
Here,
I didn't even think to look at the Roger Ebert review. Oh my God.
Listen to this line. Gladiator is being hailed by those with short memories as the equal of Spartacus and Ben-Hur. This is more like Spartacus Light or Dark. By the way, I think Spartacus is crazy overrated, as we discussed in our review. I think this is way better than Spartacus. It's only necessary to think back a few months to Julie Taymor's Titus for a film set in ancient Rome that's immeasurably better to look at? What? The visual accomplishment of Titus shames Gladiator, and its story is a whole heck of a lot better than the Gladiator screenplay, even if Shakespeare didn't make his Titus the only undefeated champion in Roman history. By the way,
Ebert is mentally ill. Like, what is going on here?
This film is clearly Shakespearean in scope. That's what I don't even understand. Sure, it's not Titus Andronicus, but the film Titus... I haven't seen it in a while, but
it's actually good. It's got Anthony Hopkins in.
Yeah,
No, it's not as good as this, of course, though. It's just like it's one of those ones you watch for Anthony Hopkins, basically.
Yeah.
He's also missed the central premise of what Gladiator is. Gladiator is Spartacus Light. That isn't to be derisive about the film. It's that as we found out, that movie drags, but that story is super compelling. And so what they did is they streamlined the aspects of that movie and made it attuned to a modern audience's sensibilities, and that's why it succeeds. It's all of the Spartacus stuff without any of the trappings of 1960s fat baked into the film.
If anything, that's actually the contrast for Gladiator 2. That's what Gladiator 2 failed to do to Gladiator 1. Gladiator, if you have seen Spartacus and Ben-Hur, is clearly giving like a nod and an homage to some of those scenes, but it's doing them actually better or as well and in their own way. Gladiator 2 is just going, here's a clip of Maximus from Gladiator 1 and some music. You know what I mean? Like they're doing the most basic version of it.
He also says Joaquin Phoenix is passable as Commodus.
Wait. There's a better line, Richard. This one's going to send Thorin over the edge. Okay,
go on.
Gladiator lacks joy. It employs depression as a substitute for personality and believes that if the characters are bitter and morose enough, we won't notice how dull they are.
Don't you think Maximus is one of the most vibrant on-character characters you've ever seen? Like, he actually has the full range of emotion. He shows depth in his character, his subtlety.
He also shows humor.
Bombastic, everything,
There are funny moments in Gladiator, like when the German guy pretends to be poisoned, and then they all have a bro laugh together. It's funny, and like he has a sense of humor even in the darkest times in this movie.
Yeah,
he's just a reserved
he has
guy.
that line about like when he says like death smiles at us all a man can do is smile back, and that's just like something he's just tossing out there. You know, this motherfucker's been in the trenches. Like, imagine he was fighting all the Gaul wars, he's fighting in all the Germanic wars.
It employs depression as a substitute for personality. I can understand that being true of other pieces of art, but it's not true of this film whatsoever.
Think about this context of what that sentence is. He liked 500 Days of Summer. You've got the wrong review, mate. That's 500 Days of Summer. You just described it there. It deploys depression as a replacement for personality.
Yeah. Mate, 2 stars. You know what? I literally didn't even bother with the Ebert angle for this episode because I literally thought, well, there's no way he would do a bad review. Right. I thought that was an absolute home banker. Like, I couldn't conceive of a world where Roger Ebert would be wrong again. Wrong again.
Well, it's all good. He's looking up at us from hell now.
Right, yeah, but that's a problem. He's in Elysium, echoing in eternity, telling everyone that great movies and great players are shit, and being wrong there.
Who's wrong? Is somebody going to clip us 25 years from now?
Well,
we'll still see. Reading his shit.
I want to see, because the people that have took over the mantle, because Roger Ebert is still an active...
The dream. Look, it's an absurd, narcissistic dream. But in 30 years, Monty, there's a community show from some big influencers. And instead of Roger Ebert, they reference what the last Free Nation review was for that film and tell us that we're all wrong, because by then humans have mutated into some sort of the time machine style Morlocks and LNI. And then we're just assholes who are just wrong about all movies where outdated toxic masculinity. That could be real, sadly.
But yeah, I was looking to see if they reviewed Gladiator 2 on the website. I can't see. They must have, obviously. But anyway, fucking hell. Like, just what a nightmare. Why? How? 2 stars? Gladiator! 2 stars! 2!
He just totally missed the entire... I just don't understand how any man could watch this movie and not just vibe so hard with the masculine fantasy of it and think,
look,
wow, this movie was really depressing. It's like, this movie is for men. This movie should not be depressing whatsoever. Sure, it sucks to lose your family.
This guy who found gay subtext in Casablanca.
That's true. But think about this. The main character in this movie is a badass general and a great individual soldier. Oh, what? Fate, he sticks by his morals and fate conspires to screw him? Well, fuck that. His sheer force of will and skill will get him from being a slave to the most famous man in Rome in a completely different career or life trajectory. How is that depressing? That's not depressing. That is fucking inspiring.
It even ends the film, people forget this, with the African guy with a mega life-affirming thing of and I will see you soon, my friend, but not yet. Again, the same thing with the refrain plays. That's fucking a mega ending.
Now we are free. I'll see you again. But not yet.
What a fucking uplifting ending that is.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, also, how do you like Spartacus? And the Gladiator is depressing. Like, what? What?
Or Ben-Hur?
Like, Spartacus is way more depressing. Like, it's way,
you know what? I'm just going to say, Richard, I think I know why he went from, if you notice, in the 60s, 70s, he's getting loads of films sort of right. Like, we're all agreeing with him. With all the classics, or all the Scorsese. I think he, for real's done that thing people do, where, you know, sometimes it's not nostalgia, it's that you were young. The difference is, after he watched Casablanca, some straight hot fire blonde gave him a hand job or something, and he went, oh, fucking hell, what an incredible movie. My thoughts are so clear. It was an old-ass man who was just reamed out by the time this film came out. He's just like, fucking Gladiator, it's not Spartacus, is it, mate? Like, that's the shittest take of all time.
Shout out to Mrs. Ebert.
Yeah.
There you go. God bless her.
Mate, I'd say the opposite. If she'd have done a better job, she actually could have made all these films have awesome reviews. She'd have kept him happy, you know, kept him cheery. Take one for the team. Lie back and think of Gladiator.
The thing with Ebert is that, by the way, he could almost always, with the exception of 500 Days of Summer, he could almost always correctly identify a terrible film.
Right.
He could always do that. Like, if you go and look at like the reviews he gave bad reviews to, he's pretty much on point, you know. Like, he's
also funny in a lot of those reviews. So
yeah, there is no redeeming quality of like Battlefield Earth or whatever. You know, he gets that. But then it's like when he is presented with a classic, a bona fide classic, a genre-defining classic, he can't see the forest for the fucking trees. And it's like, you know, this is the guy, The Thing. It's all gore. What is wrong with you? Why did this guy... It's like, put it this way, you know how people say about Duncan? Why is Duncan allowed to tweet? Why does he still have a platform? Unironically, why did Roger Ebert still have a platform, though? Like, I'm just saying that. Unironically,
the one thing this experience of doing foreplay and learning about Roger Ebert's opinions has made me understand, I can now relate to this, is obviously you want to just be the person who goes, look, if you don't like someone's things, just ignore them or whatever. No, I'm actually glad he's dead. So now I actually see why fans think that about me. I get it. If you're the biggest Zemu fan of ever, of course you just want me dead. Then I won't be saying shit about Zemu next tournament. So in a way, look, I'll never agree with you, but I get it. I get it, guys. Okay. Thanks to Roger Ebert for making me aware of that experience. You know.
Well, on that note,
it's too much. Are we wrapping it up? We put a pin in it. All right. Okay. Let's do final thoughts about Gladiator 2, and then let's end with some final thoughts about Gladiator, the far superior film, a modern classic. So I'll just do my final thoughts about Gladiator 2. This is everything that is wrong with the current way of doing things. By the way, Ridley Scott, under Scott Free Productions, was the production company for this. He was able to get a script that was cannibalized from other scripts, put together, and just get this movie greenlit by raising money, not because this film had any artistic merit, it doesn't, not because this film was going to add anything to the oeuvre of epic movies, it doesn't, not because this movie was going to be a worthy sequel to Gladiator, it isn't, simply because they knew if they threw 200, 300 million into a movie, they could make a 150 million profit. That was it, because people would go and watch a sequel to Gladiator because the first movie is so good. Gladiator 2 is trash. The performances, trash. The casting, trash. Denzel Washington does his best to put this motherfucking film on his back. Guess what? Trash. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't hold up. The story is horrifically written. The arcs are not satisfying. Do people even have completed arcs in this movie? Not really. Not even Macrinus, who it turns out may as well be the protagonist of the film. I bet if I timed it all up, he has more screen time than Lucius. But then again, if he doesn't, that would only be because this actor may as well be fucking invisible. Paul Mescal, it cannot do this. I don't know where he learned to act. I don't know where he trained. This isn't for you, homie. Big blockbusters, not for you. You are garbage. You have no fucking gravitas. You will never do a good film. You cannot even maintain an accent for the entirety of a movie. Ridley Scott should not have allowed him to do what he did. And I will add this. If I was fucking Russell Crowe and I saw Ridley Scott do this, it would bring the friendship into question, because I gave you my best. I gave you my heart and soul. I gave you an Oscar-winning performance in a movie that is lauded as one of your greatest that you ever committed to screen. I thought we were friends, Ridley. I thought we were friends. You think that guy is fit to lace my fucking boots? No, he isn't. So, angry phone calls there, although Russell Crowe is pretty chilled out these days. Whatever. I'd be furious. Gladiator 2 is an absolute stinker. It's one of the worst movies we've done on all of foreplay. It is down there with Batman Returns as just a totally redundant garbage sequel for morons. Fuck everything about this film.
It's also that they even give us the same locations. It's like we're in North Africa again, and here's the small desert arena that you work your way up to the Colosseum.
A total retread. It
is just the same movie, but everything is worse, and then it actively tries to sabotage the character of Maximus and his noble qualities from the first movie while doing that. It's an abomination.
Which, by the way, Ridley Scott loves doing that now all of a sudden. He loves coming back to the movies he made, and he just keeps fucking with them and sticking his fingers in the gumbo. Like, look, the sequel to Prometheus, I forget what it's called. It's that ridiculous one where everyone's dead on the planet that you really wanted them to be in. Yeah, Covenant. Like, by the way, the only good thing about Prometheus is at the end, when he's ahead and she goes off on a spaceship and she's going to meet the fucking creators. I was hyped for the sequel, even though I hated Prometheus. You immediately kill her. Fassbender is back with a full body and a twin and a clone who he has a homoerotic relationship with one of the most hilarious lines about, I will do, you blow and I'll do the fingering. And he has killed every one of them. We don't even meet them. I fucking hate you, Ridley. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? He's not a replicant. Why are you doing this? I just can't. Ridley, you've got to stop, mate. Enough's enough. Duncan, your final thoughts about Gladiator 2?
Right, as I said, here's the problem. I never actually, while I was watching it, was like, oh, everything in this sucks. Like, it was more like I kept waiting for like the film to begin, if you know what I mean. Because like I say, I would see scenes, and I would even see, because actually one thing I'm pretty good at is knowing, because I've watched so many films, knowing what tropes are going to play out and what would be the obvious thing to do from that to get to the next part of the story. And first of all, it's not only very predictable, but here's the difference. Gladiator is too, but Gladiator is really satisfying when they do that, and when you hit that beat, because you got the suspension of disbelief. You're in the film, you're just enjoying it. You're soaking up the atmosphere and the great performances and the haunting fucking refrains and the soundtrack and the set design. The problem with this film, I thought, was because it does have a brilliant technical director, it looks like it should be correct, aside from the CGI. I think the CGI is terrible. And in general, by the way, I am completely against modern CGI. I think it's better if you can do like Chris Nolan or whatever, it still does it where you still do half and half and you try and do as much. It's what's his name? Same with I think Villeneuve also tries to do the same thing. You try where possible not to use it, basically, instead of lean on it as a crutch. So I thought when you're watching some of these scenes, like I said about some of the dialogue, it was like, first of all, delivered by a great actor. Some of these dialogue lines would have hit differently or could have worked differently. And it's like I could see the seeds of what could have been like a good film in itself, even if it was a retread, but it never ever hit any point for me. There was never a moment in the entire movie where I ever went like, fuck yes, or that's a memorable thing, or wow, what a cool moment. Like I say, I got 2/3 through and I was sort of like, fuck, I thought that was like act one. Like the movie's going to be over in a minute. And like, there's no more room for development. And then I agree with you on the ending. I thought, surely with how hard they're telegraphing that the Macrinus guy fucks everyone, it's not just going to be that he fucks everyone and tries to be the emperor himself. Like, oh yeah, that's it. And then he has a one-on-one sword fight. And then the movie like ends with, as we say, Monty, like, good news. In the end, Rome lived happily ever after.
Don't even know how that would work, by the way, as a premise, because if you pay attention, right, so first of all, how would Macrinus ever be emperor? By the way, the next in line, if he thinks he's in line, which he isn't, but he thinks he is, the next in line would have been the monkey. The monkey was put into a superior position for him. So fuck that. And then just also as well, just on this note about Gladiator 2, it's like, why do you have to have this guy fucking in so much of the movie, delivering so much of the dialogue, the main actor, Paul Mescal? he cannot do it. He cannot sell it. You've got to be able to realize as you're filming that his casting reminds me of Hayden Christensen in fucking the prequels. It's actually insane how poorly cast he is for this role.
That's a good comparison.
It really is, isn't it? It's like, because he's delivering so much of the dialogue and the dialogue is coming out terrible. And it's like, just don't give him any more dialogue.
I hate to break it to you, Richard, but the Zoomers who grew up on the prequels fucking love Hayden Christensen. It's so weird.
Yeah, but he's had that renaissance, hasn't he, where he's leaned into it and come back. He didn't want to be alive during the time of the prequels. Him and the actor that played Jar Jar Binks used to meet up and have pity parties in bars where they were just talking about why they don't commit suicide today. They were getting absolutely hammered by everyone on the early internet, by the way.
Richard, this just shows you how different, like, the circumstances of how you... When I hear the story about Jake Lloyd, the little boy who played Anakin in the first one, getting hit, heart goes out to him. Jar Jar Binks actor, you can just fucking hit the bricks, Jar Jar. I don't give a fuck. Every dollar you got from that was almost blood money, mate. Get the fuck out of my face.
That's actually insane, isn't it? But like I said, this guy, because we live in a time where, like, Paul Mescal should.
Also, Richard, I can't take it seriously. Like, oh, Misha going to commit suicide.
I
can't do it. I can't do it. I can't.
So Paul Mescal unironically should be getting the same levels of hate as Hayden Christensen. I don't advocate for it. Don't harass people on social media, etc. But I'm just saying, if there was any justice in the world, and we lived in that time, like if Gladiator 2 had come out at the time of the prequels, this guy would be getting fucking roasted, and he rightly so. He's fucking terrible. He's terrible. Anyway, that's Gladiator 2. Fuck that film. Fuck any critic that says it's got redeeming qualities. Fuck anyone who just says, "Oh, well, it's just a sequel to Gladiator. Just enjoy it for what it is." It ruins the first film, or at least it tries to, by retconning things that don't make sense. That is the unforgivable crime of a sequel, by the way. The unforgivable crime is you retcon something. I don't have problems with retcons. Obviously, I'm a big comic books fan. You have to retcon shit sometimes. It makes sense. It makes things interesting. You can do interesting retcons. I'm all about that, right? But if you retcon something that makes the classic starter worse, fuck you. And they did that. They managed to find a way to ruin Maximus. How can you live with yourself?
Anyway, by the way, to give a positive note, since often this, like this film being shit, and Napoleon comes with this line I fucking detest, where people go, "Hey, Ridley Scott hasn't made a good film in 15 years." Actually, as we've all mentioned on this show multiple times, the 2021 film, The Last Duel, is a legitimately good film. I won't even tell you any of the plot, but it is essentially like it's a very unique film. It has an homage to a very famous movie. Obviously, people figure out when they watch it, but it's actually a legitimately good film, and that was actually sort of hated on, I remember. So no, that was only 4 years ago. That was a good film. So he doesn't have to do bad films. He just did pick some to do that were bad.
Dude, listen, I hate Matt Damon, and I hate Matt Damon's face, and I hate everything about Matt Damon, and it's a shame because I want to like him, because again, he's like a blue collar guy who got into acting, right? But The Martian, it's a good film. It is.
Yeah.
It's not a great movie, but it's good. I would absolutely say it's a movie that you watch. You definitely don't ignore The Martian, even if you hate Matt Damon. And he does get skinny and emaciated at the end, which is kind of cool. So after saving up his own poop in bags, like he's a hoarder, but he has to. It makes sense. He's stranded on Mars, people. Forgive him. So no, Ridley Scott has made good films. He has made good films. Not many of late. The American Gangster one he did with Denzel Washington, by the way. Another movie. I think that's actually a good genre movie. It's really good. Denzel Washington, of course.
He actually even did a comedy, if people don't like. Film Matchstick Men's good. It's actually a Nick Cage one that's got, it's not mega, but it's like a nice little jaunt out, you know, it's fun,
And we could have put Kingdom of Heaven in this. It's not Sword and Sandals, technically, but it is a medieval epic. We could have maybe worked it in. So, you know,
I'm sure we'll get around to the director's cut of that movie.
You do Gladiator, you do Kingdom of Heaven, right? Kingdom of Heaven, by the way, it's a pretty unfairly maligned film, particularly if you go and watch the director's cut. Yeah. By the way, what I love is when I'm got chronic insomnia and I'm watching all the TikTok shorts at night, and it's just that clip of like Saladin and fucking the leper, Baldwin, King Baldwin or whatever, and they're meeting, and he says, I will send my best doctors to your tent to assist you, and he goes salam alaikum, and they walk away, and there's just thousands of comments going, this is when war like, it's not a documentary, lads. It's like, this is when war was between real men and they respected each other. Salahuddin was a great man, but yes, Baldwin also as well, what a G, died in his early 20s carrying leprosy, but the fact that they could share doctors, and it's like all this discussion, it's like, this scene probably didn't even happen, you dickheads. What the fuck are you doing? But anyway, it is an unfairly maligned movie, unlike Gladiator 2, which deserves to be maligned, along with Roger Ebert.
Oh, no, by the way, I actually think if you had the director's version of Kingdom of Heaven, you just recast Orlando Bloom, that would even be considered a very good film, actually.
Yes,
yeah.
actually. That's another one of his great cinema crimes. Now, final words about Gladiator. Obviously, Gladiator is a must-watch movie, a stone-cold classic, and, in many ways, a distillation of everything that is great about the epic genre sword and sandals movies. In a nutshell, it has got a fantastic setting, a historically relevant setting, where things are happening in the background that are relevant to anyone that would be a history buff. I'm not talking about the type of history buff who sits there and goes, yeah, but that type of armor wasn't around at this time. That was decommissioned. Not that guy. That guy's going to have a bad time. But people who are generally interested in parts of Rome and how Rome went through very different phases of its life cycle before it collapsed, this is a very interesting backdrop. It has an incredible cast, as we talked about at the start of the episode, an incredible cast doing incredible performances. It has an unbelievable tight script that gets you from A to B to C, Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, where everything happens the way it's supposed to. Everyone has an arc. Everyone essentially gets everything they want and or deserve. It all makes sense, even amidst the Shakespearean-esque tragedy. It is a movie that, bizarrely, despite Roger Ebert saying it is depressing, that is very life-affirming and feel-good by the end, because even in death, yes, there are greater things you can achieve than simply survival, and which is a concept that actually progresses mankind forward. And ultimately, it's hugely entertaining, from its incredibly choreographed battle scenes and Colosseum fight scenes, also just to the snappy, poppy dialogue delivered by actors relishing everyone getting great lines. Gladiator is enjoyable. You can watch it with friends, having a beer, as I've done many times, because the scenes are just all great, all classics. You can dip in and out and not miss a thing, such as the simplicity, the great simplicity of its story, and also you can really engage and watch it for what it is, which is a young actor at the peak of his powers, delivering an Oscar-winning performance, an all-time great director delivering an insanely cinematic modern epic, and some of the old heads who were soon to die after this, giving it one last great performance for their legacies, particularly Oliver Reed as Proximo, who ultimately redeemed himself as a fucking actor overall in the eyes of many critics who had written him off as simply being a fat, washed-up drunk. And in that sense, Proximo and Oliver Reed's story, Oliver Reed's real-life story, echoes what Gladiator is about. Masculine redemption, and how bigger things than us, that nobody is truly irredeemable when presented with opportunities to do good things, be it work or art or honor or indeed shows of strength. Gladiator fucking clears almost any other modern epic movie. It is up there with the all-time greats. I cannot believe there are people on planet Earth that couldn't enjoy this film.
Yeah, and on top of that, it really does. It's one of the best films, in spite of its kind of ridiculous plot holes, in spite of how overwrought it can appear. The acting performances really ground it and make it feel real. This is a film that I think could have easily gone off the rails without the cast that it had, and had some of these really iconic lines been delivered differently, I think it could have come across as very cheesy. But because especially Russell Crowe is kind of understated in this movie and has this like very quiet strength to him, it makes it work in really magical ways. And I think it's derivative in many ways, but it really transcends being the sum of its part into something way, way more and way, way more iconic. Right. And it has a lot more meaning to it. And I think at the end of the day, even though it's basic, this film really nails the masculine desire for a sense of purpose and a life of honor and strength and duty. right? And I think that's what's beautiful about it. And it really feels timeless. You know, watching this movie 25 years after its release, it still has all of the meaning that it did when it was released. And it feels as though in 100 years, it's still going to have that meaning. And I think that's what's amazing about it.
Yep. Duncan, appropriately, the last word for you, as it is.
Yeah,
one of your
I've said most of my thoughts on this one, but yeah, for me, this movie is like, first of all, I agree. It's actually one of the only films. I mean, Kingdom of Heaven could have been one, but just had those flaws in it. It's one of the only films that actually can be like a true epic. I actually think that modern cinema cannot. And by the way, I do think CGI is a major part of it. If you think of it, the last ones were this, Lord of the Rings. After that, even things like Star Wars become shit because it's just stupid, like cutscenes from a video game, but that's the movie at that point in time, and obviously like bad casting where you casting popular people instead of good actors and stuff. So for me, this is almost like the sweet spot of like you've gotten to like a good level of tech, but you've also got amazing like lenses, the fucking pristine image. You've got all the money to do all the nothing's ropey in the background or some dodgy like image or the clothing. It all looks really appropriate. The performances, I think, are mega. It's another one of those ones where remember, this is what's amazing I've noticed about doing foreplay is the amount of times you watch a film with a mega cast and it's like it's always the same formula. It's like having sports teams. No one's really making Real Madrid where you sign all the best players. You have to have like one where you have that guy before we know he's awesome yet. He's going to become dope in 3 years, or this actress is doing one of her first really serious roles. You have to almost backdoor your way into like extra people in the cast being awesome. Or like you did here, you get older actors who would never be the leading man anymore. Like Oliver Reed could never be a leading man in a film like this, but you tell you what, you can use as an awesome side character, say with Richard Harris, etc. So I think they nail that. So for me, I agree with all the themes about masculinity, and it's one of the most heroic films, one of the most inspiring films I think ever. I also agree with Richard. It has insane replayability. It is bonkers. Like literally every 2 or so years, just forget enough connective scenes and stuff like that and a couple of details and you can just rewatch it. And it has that quality, which I think is the hallmark of truly great cinema, which is when you rewatch it, look, it can never be the first time, but I'll tell you what, it's always the second time if you get the analogy there. Like it's always really good. And this is one of the things I learned about theatre. It's not about if you know how the story's going to end. It's not about like, oh, is there a twist? The beats work every time. The reason why I always say The Prestige is one of my favourite films, or Heat. Look, I obviously know every time I watch them what the fucking twist at the end is. It doesn't matter. The same parts work building me up to that, and then I get the same crescendo ending that's fucking baller. So yeah, I think for me, it's right up there with The Godfather. All those films is one of my favourites. I can easily go back to this over and over again. And Russell Crowe's just very, very good.
This was the Russell Crowe era for sure. I mean, we talked about how insanely good he was on LA Confidential, and then he went on, a run of film. He's great in Master and Commander too. I think he really does a great job with Jack Aubrey from the books. But I think, honestly, Russell Crowe for that 10-year window may have been the best actor. I think it's. Oh.
It's nigh on impossible, as I said earlier, to imagine anyone else in this role. And that is ultimately the great feeling of Gladiator 2. Even with all of its script problems, if they had had an equivalent actor of Russell Crowe in the lead, it could have been redeemed. But instead, as I said, they went for something that I do not see, do not understand. And, look, you have to have gravitas. Funnily, the only fucking Latin word they didn't say and explain to the audience. You have to have that if you're going to be in a role that's all about your story. And there's just none of that in the movie. As I said, Denzel Washington is ultimately the protagonist. So whatever.
All right, guys. Well, that'll wrap up our Sword and Sandals arc. Next week, we'll be starting our David Lynch arc. So watch Blue Velvet.
Rest in peace, by the way. But there will never be another David Lynch. You know how people say those platitudes when people die? No, and obviously there'll never be another one because, everyone's an individual in that. But unironically, there will never be another David Lynch. Like everything he's done for cinema. It was one of those deaths where it's like, yeah, he was 78 and he was battling emphysema. So you can't say it's a shock, but really, really sad. Definitely an affecting celebrity death. Yeah. The guy was a fucking original in every sense of the word.
And by the way, guys, we don't do TV on this show, but do watch Twin Peaks. Do that for yourself. It is great. So I'm actually rewatching Twin Peaks right now because my wife hasn't seen it before. So that's going to be fun for me. And I, starting to watch Twin Peaks again, I'm like, fuck, I forgot how good this is. It's one of the all-time great TV shows. and even more astonishing that it was done in the early 90s. So that's it, guys. We'll see you next week for Blue Velvet.